At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
What up, everybody? Denton Day on Westwood One Sports. Happy Saturday. It's a conference tournament, a lot of finals today. I would say conference tournament final day, but we got a couple tomorrow as well. It's been an excellent day of college basketball. It was an excellent day of college basketball yesterday, and hopefully we got more to come. We're about halfway through the Big 12 final between Arizona and Houston. These are two teams that when you fill your bracket out tomorrow, if you are a Sunday bracket filler outer, I usually wait a little bit, but if you fill your brackets out as soon as those bad boys drop, you might have Houston or Arizona winning this whole shebang. They're squaring off now in the Big 12 championship. We get Duke against Virginia in about 90 minutes. That's a hurt-ass Duke team with only one real point guard taking on a Virginia team that scores this year. If you know anything about Virginia basketball, prior to this year, scoring came few and far between. Points were very much at a premium for them, so that's going to be a fun one that we have coming up here. You can connect with the show on Twitter at @TheDentonDay. You can give us a phone call, 310-840-4910. The games that we have seen today, outside of the ones that are going on right now, have been excellent. Purdue and UCLA was fun towards the end, although Purdue was able to handle UCLA. But Michigan and Wisconsin was a barn burner of a matchup between a team in Michigan that has legitimate championship potential and a team in Wisconsin that is they're a good tournament team. But getting to see Michigan get pushed a little bit, it's no secret that the Big Ten has not won an NCAA tournament in 2 decades. The last team to do so was Michigan State. Maryland technically won one in 2002. They were an ACC team at the time. We are not going to count that. There has not been a Big Ten team to win a championship while being a participating member in the Big Ten in over 2 decades. And I look at Michigan and I say, well, I feel like Michigan has all of the pieces there that would be necessary to win a championship. They just get pushed a little bit by some good teams. You know, I was not in action, but I was there when they took on Duke in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago now, and I thought Michigan played well, but I also didn't think they played well, and they allowed Duke to come away with a win in a game where I thought, hey, Michigan should probably. It felt like for parts of the game they were the better of the two teams, but as it has been the case the last 25 years, when the Big Ten teams play other teams that are outside of their conference in the NCAA tournament, it doesn't end up going well for them. So I'm really excited to see Michigan and Purdue in the Big Ten championship. Michigan won on a game winner, by the way, and that's kind of become a little bit of a theme over the last 48 hours in college basketball. You had a sensational winner last night with Arizona, and the shot that Bradley made, which is one of the better shots that you're going to see in really just college basketball the rest of the way. But it's also one of those crazy things to where we're smart enough to know we can't just call that the shot of the year, because we had shots today, like in that Michigan winner, where, hey, they won at the buzzer. You had a back and forth between Dayton and St. Louis that I'm going to play for you here shortly. That was, oh, this is epic. 14 seconds, you're going back and forth in the A10, and all of a sudden the number one seed in the A10 goes down because Dayton was able to hit a shot with 0.3 seconds left. I mean, this is the time that you really love. If you maybe weren't paying attention to college basketball, you can kind of just slip right in here and be like, this is sensational, because there's great shot making. There's guys that are playing high-level basketball, and it's a lot of fun to watch. So we're going to keep you posted on all of the games that are in action today as we move throughout the course of 4 hours here on Westwood One Sports. Right now in the Big 12 Championship, Arizona's up 6 with under 30 to go in half number 1. So that one's going to go into halftime. Arizona has a shot. They'll have about 7 seconds here to shoot it and see if they can increase their lead, which they end up doing. So they're going to go up likely 8 into the half. We got Duke and UVA coming up later today as well. A story did break this morning, though, that I find to be particularly relevant as we approach the NCAA tournament. And it involves Darryn Peterson. And it really, what it's done is taken a spotlight to the way that media, locally and nationally, have covered Darryn Peterson and put a spotlight on the fact that there are a lot of people that got this story incredibly wrong. Incredibly wrong. And I'm not expecting apologies, because that's just not the way that things work in the world. But there is a lot of people that do deserve to apologize, or should be apologizing to Darryn Peterson, because they took to Twitter with the Twitter fingers. They took to airwaves with microphones and cameras and televisions and all these things, and they skewered a guy's character without knowing what was going on behind the scenes, without the proper information to really make an adequate assessment of who the guy is as a person. And that was all thrown by the wayside. They said, hey, he had a flu and no one knew. He clearly sucks. There was a story that was put out today by a local paper, the Kansas City Star, I believe it was. And they got to talk to Darryn Peterson after Kansas lost in their Big 12 semifinal game, and it wasn't particularly close. Kansas has been very kind of up and down this entire season, whether Darryn Peterson is playing or he's not. But they got to talk to Darryn Peterson, and it's the first time all year that we have gotten to go beneath the surface of what the story has been with him, and the cramping and the injuries, the sickness, the reason that he is sitting out of games, the reason that he is tapping Bill Self in the second half of a game against Cincinnati after he hits a three and saying, Coach, I need to come out. And while most people were attacking the character of him, it is very clear in this story that there is a lot more to it that we were not aware of. And it starts and kind of ends with the idea of cramping. Now, when you hear cramping, I feel like you kind of think of the lowest level of cramping that you can imagine. You think of like Little League basketball, where a 7-year-old hasn't had enough water and you tell him, hey, walk it off, fight it off. It's just a side stitch, right? We've all had side stitches if you've done any sort of athletic activity in your life. You've been in that position. But to read the details of the story with Darryn Peterson having to be hospitalized for full body cramps, I have spent the entire day trying to get into the headspace of what it would feel like to have an entire body cramp. And I can't get there. I have no earthly idea how that would feel. I know it sucks when like a calf cramp hits me. I'm a runner. I get calf cramps. They suck. They're not very fun. I can't imagine that happening to both calves. I can't imagine that happening to both calves while also simultaneously happening to other portions of my body. And Peterson was hospitalized, but he wasn't just hospitalized recently. This is an ongoing issue that has been taking place for the entirety of the season for the Kansas Jayhawks. He was hospitalized before games started to be played, constantly being in this cycle of needing an IV bag or IV bags, plural, just to be able to get himself ready to play in a basketball game. But that part hasn't been reported. Now, in fairness, Darryn Peterson hasn't said anything about this before. But it's also, I don't find it to be his responsibility to be constantly giving us updates on why things are happening that are internal for him. But I want to continue reading from this story, right? So there's a quote in this story from Peterson describing what was this full body cramp. And he had said, this was referring to something that happened in the preseason. He had said, quote, the previous week we had a boot camp where we were just running, no basketball. The previous week caught up to me and my body just kind of locked up, like just completely stiffened, locked up. He had a full body cramp. It was super serious. This is according to him still. I'm reading in the article. You could say it was traumatic. I would say it was a traumatic experience, end quote. So there's a little bit more to this, right? But I find that to be, that final sentence to be maybe the most important one that we're going to have to revisit later. I can't imagine what it feels like to have an entire body cramp up. If this has never happened to you, you cannot imagine what it feels like to have an entire body cramp up. That feels like one of those things where you can't possibly understand what it feels like until you are actually experiencing that particular feeling, which, by the way, I don't want that. I'm going to unsubscribe from feeling an entire body cramp. I have no desire to participate. But the idea of him recognizing at 19 years old, this is a pretty traumatic thing that's happening to me right now. My entire body is locking up. I have to be hospitalized because my entire body is locking up. So I want to just put a pinpoint in that because that's something that we need to get back to later in terms of the communication of this, in terms of some of the things that he's been attacked for that we, again, didn't have all of the information for. But I'm continuing in this article. So they mentioned when he was pulled out of one of the games, and he was quoted in saying, as much as I wanted to say I wasn't thinking about the experience being the full body cramp, I was. It was traumatic for me. And this is one of the games where he was sitting on the bench. He's been criticized for this. Hey, why is he not celebrating with his teammates? Why is he not up and about? Even if he's pulled from the game, we have seen guys get hurt, miss out on games, but they're still there active with their teammates. We've seen that happen. Like Caleb Wilson's a good example of that. That dude broke his hand, and he's out there clapping it up. What is the doctor going to tell you the first thing you do when you break any kind of bone in your hand? He's going, hey, maybe don't clap. Let's try and avoid anything, but he's clapping it up because he wants to be there for his teammates. The Darryn Peterson situation where he was just sitting on the bench, now we know, well, he's sitting there basically in complete terror because he's like, oh my God, is this going to happen again where my full body's going to lock up and I might potentially have to leave this court on a gurney in an ambulance because I'm going to have to be in the hospital again. This is why I pinpointed this idea of trauma, because just because it happens once and then you move on from it, you don't really ever move on from it. It always is going to linger in the back of your mind of, hey, this could happen again. It happened once to me. There's nothing that is stopping it from happening again if we don't really know what the cause of the problem is. And throughout this entire article that the Kansas City Star put out, there was really nothing in there that said this is the problem. He's been playing, the last couple of games for Kansas, which has been excellent. Again, they've been kind of hit or miss. I think they're kind of in this weird spot where they don't really know how to kind of play with him yet because he's missed so many games. And I feel like that is a fair criticism. When your best player is missing a lot of games and then he goes back into the lineup, there's going to be an adjustment period. But the trauma surrounding this and them not knowing what it is, I think has to factor into the conversation and the way we talk about this, the way that he was treated. But then he addressed kind of the foolish stuff. And I actually kind of love this quote here. He said, quote, there's some foolish stuff being said, but I probably could have done some stuff better, like getting in front of people instead of making stuff up. It's over now, but nobody say nothing about me finishing games and stuff now, which is funny to me, but I don't really care I am just glad I'm feeling better. So there is this acknowledgement from Darryn Peterson of saying, hey, like I probably could have come out here and I could have given the world an opening to my inner workings, to what's going on behind the scenes that nobody knew about. I decided not to do that. And that's his prerogative. You're a basketball player that's 19 years old. You don't have to let the world see every single bit of you. You don't have to. There's nothing about being a basketball player that means you have to let the world in on an experience that has been traumatic for you. And I keep going back to this word trauma because that's what the kid was dealing with. We were witnessing trauma in real time. And oftentimes it feels like when trauma happens, and when we see it big, brash, and in like big lights, everyone is always like, oh, like we need to be better. We need to be better. We need to be better, right? We need to be more careful. We need to handle things better as media members, as people who are talking about athletes and all of these things. But then when the athletes are actually going through it, you fall on this weird excuse of like, well, he's not telling us anything, so I can just tee off. I mean, there's a large segment of people that actually thought that Bill Self, one of the greatest coaches of a generation, was getting punked by a 19-year-old who was getting paid $3 million. As if Bill Self isn't getting paid substantially more than that, likely by the same people that are paying Darryn Peterson. We were dumb enough to think that Self was not aware of what was going on, that Darryn Peterson was pulling one over on him. Do you know how idiotic that is? This whole thing has been a very humbling realization and a gripping realization of, hey, this grace thing goes like one way. We expect grace to be given to us in the media, but we are not willing to extend that, and we're not willing to admit, hey, we kind of screwed up on this. Hey, we were attacking a kid not knowing the entire bit of the story here just because it was easy content, just because we wanted to get our names out on a story or whatever, and we didn't take anything into consideration that maybe we don't know the whole story. That maybe because of one like weird text message that was sent from a guy that was since kind of removed from the operation, that maybe there was more than just that one text message. That maybe this, hey, here's this one picture where Darryn Peterson's not walking down the court while his team is huddling, and it's just a picture. And maybe we shouldn't use just this one picture to make a critical assessment of who the guy is as a person. It's been humbling. It really has. And I feel for Darryn Peterson. I'm happy that he's healthy and playing. I really do think that he's a good enough player to where if Kansas wants to go on a little bit of run, they're not a championship level team, I don't think. But if Kansas wants to go on a run, maybe to the Sweet 16, maybe to the Elite 8, I do think that Darryn Peterson is good enough to get them there. I think he's proved that this year. He's a great prospect. He's just a great basketball player. They just need to kind of get into a little bit of a rhythm as a team. I hope they use the next couple of days in the lead up to whoever they play in round number one to kind of get their bearings about, to get their feet under them, to get their legs under them. And I want to go see Darryn Peterson have a hell of a tournament run, man, because I'm ready for him after hearing the story from his lips to the ears of a reporter and then to the eyes of me in reading it. I'm ready for him to go have a really, really strong performance in the NCAA tournament. It's been a big week in the NFL. I'm Denton Day. I'm sitting in on Westwood One Sports. It's been a big week in the NFL. It's been highlighted by Max Crosby going to the Ravens and then all of a sudden not going to the Ravens. What should we make of that? We'll ask legendary NFL reporter Howard Balzer about that next. It's Denton Day on Westwood One Sports. Don't go anywhere.
Conference tournaments are happening now. Who's in? Who's out? And how should it impact your bracket? March Madness is upon us on your official home of the NCAA tournament. Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
It's Denton Day on Westwood One Sports. You can find me on Twitter at the Denton Day. We'll get back into college hoops. Big 12 right now. Championship game, that's at halftime. Arizona's up by 8, 44-36 over Houston. We will update you on that periodically as we move throughout the course of the show. But let's go to the phones where we find a legendary NFL reporter. Howard Balzer is kind enough to give us a few moments here on a Saturday. Howard, first and foremost, man, we really appreciate you jumping on and making time for us. I want to get right into some of the stuff that we saw this week in the NFL, namely what went on in Baltimore. What was your initial reaction to the Max Crosby deal and then no deal?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah, that's certainly been front and center. There was so much discussion this week in the NFL. And my first reaction when the trade was made, I said, wow, the Ravens are really going for it by giving him, that much, obviously to picking up his contract, giving up 2 first-round picks. And let's be honest, knowing that he had knee surgery in January. And so that all happens, then all of a sudden it goes crazy last weekend, and a lot of discussion about it. Obviously, did the Ravens pull a fast one? Did they do this when they realized they could get Trey Hendrickson and found an easy way to get out of the trade, which can happen with any trade. It can happen with a lot of these agreements on free agent signings. If a player fails a physical, or at least in the mind of the new team, they fail them on their physical. And of course, what's being put out is they didn't like what they saw down the road potentially with this knee, and for a guy who's in advancing years in the league. So I think the Ravens are taking a little bit too much criticism for this, but I think you can understand some of it, because the big thing that everyone wonders, Denton, is if they weren't able to get Hendrickson, and that was evident when he wasn't getting great offers this past Monday on the first day of the negotiating period, when they realized they could get him, is that what drove the decision to back out of the Crosby deal? We'll never know what would have happened if they couldn't have gotten Hendrickson. So, tough one for the Ravens, tough one for the Raiders, and we'll go forward now and see what happens with him. But I can understand why some might have trepidation about the future for him because of the way he plays. I mean, he's one of those guys that he goes every play. I mean, heck, he was mad last year when the Raiders didn't play him in the final 2 games of the season. Well, that injury might have been aggravated by playing that, and by playing with the injury, who knows how, the weeks before. And so a guy who plays the way he does, you have to start wondering how many seasons does he have left? And so, that's going to be a big question for the Raiders going forward. Are they going to be able to manage Max Crosby, even though he doesn't like it when a team does that?
From the Ravens' perspective, between Crosby and Hendrickson, who do you think would have or is the better fit for what the Ravens are trying to do defensively?
Well, that's a great question, because the Ravens have been classically a 3-4 team. Now, in the NFL these days, whatever your base defense is, you're out of it on a lot of other downs. And there's not that many teams that are just pure 3-4s anymore. But that's essentially what the Ravens are. And both of those guys, Crosby and Hendrickson, haven't played as an outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense. So that's a big question about that. And let's remember this, too. I mean, Hendrickson is older than Crosby, and he's coming off an injury that limited him to only 7 games last season. So I think it's really almost impossible to predict what these next future years hold for both of those games. And again, like I said, with Crosby and Hendrickson, the way they play the game, how much can that lead to that, in a sense, basically shortening their career?
Howard Balzer with us here on Westwood One Sports with Denton Day. Now, obviously, we know, Howard, games are not won in the month of March, but you can still put a nice team together that could go and win games in October, November, December, and so on. Who do you think has had the best free agency?
There's so many moving pieces with this, and the thing that, I'll tell you one thing. The thing that jumps out with fans certainly is when their team signs 8 and 10 guys and throws around all this money. They think it's the greatest thing in the world. And then in 2 or 3 years or 4 years, half those guys aren't even on their team anymore. And so I think that's what makes it tough. I'll tell you one thing. I like what the 49ers did. And they haven't signed a lot of guys, but making a trade for the Cowboys defensive line, I think, was a good move. And the one thing I noticed is that we've seen a lot of movement. I mean, I was counting it up. I mean, there's been between 300 and 400 players in this first week that have either re-signed with their teams or switched teams as free agent signings. And a big part of that number are the teams with new head coaches and new coaching staffs. And so guys are like, Robert Saleh in Tennessee is bringing a whole bunch of guys that he knew with the Jets and the 49ers. And so I think that's put a lot of this, movement what has created so much of it because of coaches' familiarity, not only head coaches, but coordinators and other position guys, because of the familiarity with guys they had. But, to say right now, like you said in March, who had a great free agency, I always tap the brakes on it, quite honestly. I'm one of those conservative guys that I don't think it's smart to just go berserk in free agency, because the reality of it is going to be a lot of wasted money the teams are spending.
What do you think San Francisco is doing with Brandon Ayuk?
Well, I mean, he's a free agent, so they're not doing anything, and they don't want him back. And obviously there haven't been any teams that have shown interest in him at this point. And so, it wasn't a good look for him of the way he handled that whole situation in San Francisco. And so I'm sure teams aren't going to go in on Brandon Ayuk until they know what his physical situation is, much less the way, like I said, he handled that deal in San Francisco. And that's one thing that's jumped out at me too in this first week is some other guys with injuries have gotten these big contracts. I mean, Elijah Vera Tucker, who's hardly played any games in the last few years, gets a big contract in free agency, but then you find out afterwards that he's got huge per game roster bonuses totaling something like $13-14 million over 3 years, just if he's available for games. And man, you're rolling the dice anyway in free agency, much less rolling it when you're bringing in guys who have had injuries throughout their career and of course ended last season on the injured reserve list.
Howard Balzer with us here, Denton Day on Westwood One Sports. So we know that in Kansas City, Travis Kelce is coming back for another year. Should we then start to believe that maybe Patrick Mahomes, Howard, is going to be available for week number 1?
I don't know if we can believe that or not. I mean, who knows? I mean, when you get injured that late in the season, to be ready for week 1 is a real stretch. Now, I'm sure he's going to work his you-know-what off to be ready. But even if he is, here's the thing about that. So many people take for granted, okay, he's not preparing this offseason to play football. He's rehabbing from an injury, and that sets you back. And then people think you can miss 9 months or whatever it might be rehabbing, and then all of a sudden, as soon as you're cleared to play, you're going to be the same guy you were before you got injured. That's totally unrealistic, and I think a lot of people don't look at it that way. So I don't know. I mean, it's possible for week 1. It's hard for me to imagine that'll happen. How soon after that, who knows? But certainly that's what the Chiefs are hoping. But even if he's available, you wonder what level is he going to be able to play at? And that's the question, really, that no one can answer, certainly at this point.
Do you think that's why they ended up signing Kenneth Walker? I was stunned, Howard, in the kind of the lead up to free agency to realize that the Chiefs haven't had an 1,000-yard rusher since Patrick Mahomes took over as QB1. So do you think that they'll use the first few weeks, regardless of who's playing quarterback, to make sure that Kenneth Walker is carrying the load of the offense?
I think he'll carry a certain load of it. I don't think there's any doubt. You don't want to overload it, though. I mean, here's a guy, by the way, who he was either 16th or 17th in the NFL last season in rushing yards, not that much more than 1,000 yards. And let's remember, you have to average per game to rush for 1,000 yards if you play them all, 60 yards a game. That's all you have to average to be a 1,000-yard rusher. So why anyone thinks that is a standard anymore just makes me roll my eyes, to be quite honest. And so Walker made his money now on how he played in the postseason. And he had to be used more in the postseason because Zach Charbonnet got hurt, right? Well, you're not going to use him that much in regular season games because he's and any running back most of the time is not going to last. He definitely makes the Chiefs better. There's no doubt about it, and they will be relying on him. But you can't rely only on that. You're still going to have to be able to throw the ball. They're going to have to get production from the receivers and whoever the quarterback is if Mahomes isn't ready for the start of the season. But you have to have balance in the NFL. And if you do too much one way, there's going to be issues with that most of the time.
Howard, 2 more for you. And again, really appreciate the time on a Saturday. There was a lot of rumblings this week about A.J. Brown potentially being moved. It feels like A.J. Brown to the Patriots is kind of the easy connection, but then the Rams jumped into the conversation. Did you ever get a real feel onto how close the Rams might have actually been to acquiring A.J. Brown?
My sense is they didn't get really that close. I mean, when you're looking at that team and that roster and the way it's put together right now, when you already have Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua, and now Nacua isn't making that much money yet, but he will be. and you have Adams, and with the contract that A.J. Brown brings with him, you wonder how they're not going to have they're not going to have enough footballs to go around. And so it sounds good on paper, but I think from the Rams standpoint, I don't know if it really makes sense for them. The common belief is that he will be traded at some point. But once again, as he's gotten a little bit older, as he has that contract, then that's going to be what other teams look at. And so many teams now, I mean, we look at the way – now I'm not going to say that DJ Moore is A.J. Brown. I'm not comparing the two players.
Right.
But the Bears moved on from him because of his contract and the fact that they've got two younger receivers that they want to start bringing along. And that's the way – this is a young man's league, and it's tough these days a lot of times for players that are older and have big contracts to be able to really live up to it.
So, final question here for you. Do you think by the time we get to week 1 that A.J. Brown is a member of the Eagles?
I'm going to say it's 50-50 at this point. I do think because of some of the distractions that he has caused on that team, I think from that respect, the Eagles would kind of like to eliminate that unless they know that he's going to be on better behavior. But I would say it's 50-50 at this point, but I lean a little more towards above 50 just because I think the Eagles are looking that maybe it's time to move on at this point if they can move them. And that's what becomes, the big question. And it becomes a question, who knows, maybe they look at receiver in the draft and what happens in the next month or so. And if that happens, then that could be a, foreboding of what will happen with A.J. Brown.
Howard, really appreciate the time, man. This has been a lot of fun. We'll do it again.
Sounds good, Denton. Take care.
That is Howard Balzer, legendary NFL reporter, good enough to make some time for us on a Saturday and jump on with me, Denton Day, here on Westwood One. It's funny. I'd kick the can around to kick this idea around of, like, what would it look like if Los Angeles was actually the team to go and get A.J. Brown? And if you're playing Madden, it's, like, sick. Because, oh, my God, you got Puka Nacua, you got A.J. Brown, you got Devontae Adams. I don't know how they would be able to work all of those guys. I feel like, theoretically, Puka Nacua is talented enough to where you could probably put him in the slot and get some pretty favorable matchups. And I feel like if you're Los Angeles, you'd be feeling pretty good about that. But I don't know that you'd be fully interested and invested in wanting to do that on a long-term basis, especially, as Howard mentioned, when you know the contract is right around the corner for Puka Nacua, who is, by the way, going to reset the market. If he doesn't get paid more than the Jamar Chase contract, I'm going to be floored. I mean, that would have to be Puka Nacua taking a very team-friendly deal. He's going to get north of $40 million when it's time to put pen to paper. So I think that's a very interesting perspective that Howard brought up there. But on top of that, and I was doing just a little bit of research, Devontae Adams had a good year in Los Angeles this year. I didn't realize how good of a year he had. His yardage numbers weren't the most impressive. He only had 789 yards on 60 receptions. But he had 14 touchdowns in one of the most prolific offenses of the year and playing alongside the MVP and Matt Stafford. And it felt like a lot of those touchdown receptions were what I like to call backloaded, right? Like in the beginning of the season, he maybe wasn't as big of a focal point, but as he started to build chemistry with Matthew Stafford, he became a massive asset to have offensively for Los Angeles, and that's why you saw Matthew Stafford put up some of the numbers that he did and why you saw Los Angeles have some of the offensive success that they did. That's a nice guy that you want to keep in kind of his role as it currently stands, because I don't think that Devontae Adams is slowing down. He's one of the best receivers of this generation, and he's proved it over the course of really the last decade and some change, and I think he still has it. So I kind of like the idea of keeping Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua the way that they are right now. Obviously, A.J. Brown is a sensational wide receiver, but I just don't know where he would fit in that offense, and if they're in a position right now to where they want to make him fit. They very much embrace the F them picks mentality when it comes to building a roster. I can't blame them. It won them a championship a couple of years ago. But I would point out that a lot of the F them picks stuff was more directed at the defense, to build the defense. And you kind of got by with really Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp. I mean, Kupp had an elite season that year. So that's just something to monitor with the A.J. Brown. I kind of feel like it's going to be somebody that comes out of nowhere, like an RKO, that's going to end up RKOing New England and stealing A.J. Brown from underneath of their grips. And then A.J. Brown's going to be somewhere else by the time we start week number 1. I'm not anticipating that he is going to be a member of the Philadelphia Eagles It's Denton Day on Westwood One Sports. Coming up next, I'm upset with the Ravens, but not for the reason that you are. I think they made a critical error, and I'll explain what that error is next. Don't go anywhere. It's Westwood One Sports.
This exact time last year, the Seahawks signed their eventual Super Bowl winning QB, Sam Darnold. Which free agent signing could make the same impact? We'll tell you about the NFL moves you need to know. Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will be in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
We'll get back on the college hoop train in about 15 minutes. Gonzaga guard Jalen Worley is going to stop by the program, talk about them getting to yet another NCAA tournament, winning the West Coast Conference earlier this week. But the biggest headline of the week has been the Baltimore Ravens and the trade, and then the JK that they sent to Las Vegas in regards to Max Crosby. I was on the air an hour after it broke last Friday here on Westwood One, and I was amped. I was hyped. I was like, man, this is great for Baltimore. And then it got rescinded. And here's my biggest issue with this. It's not the issue that most people have. Everyone's going to call the Ravens slimy and evil and all these things. And largely that is true. But my issue is that they just haven't embraced it. I mean, when you pull a move like they pulled with the Max Crosby trade and then flip around saying, actually, we don't because we fell more in love with Trey Hendrickson, I need you to sit up at the podium and just be honest. Just sit there and say, look, we are doing what's best for our football team, and we are going to do that moving forward. Instead, what we got was Eric DeCosta being the opposite, trying to frame this as if he is actually hurt. He is actually upset. Take a listen to what he said when asked about the Max Crosby trade at his first availability in free agency.
Nobody's more upset about this than me, gutted by it, actually. And so a big regret for me. But we will move on as a football team, and I think there's many, many opportunities for us to grow as a team, to become a better team, to build a roster, and to be the team that we want to be.
So I guess he's cosplaying as a fish the way that he's gutted about losing this Max Crosby trade, losing out on Max Crosby. Here's the issue that I have, though. Why? This benefits you tremendously. And I don't need you to sit up there and to lie and say that it doesn't benefit you. You made the right choice. You could have given 2 first-round picks and then potentially a very, very large contract. If not immediately, you would have then soon given Max Crosby a very large contract. Instead, you give a much shorter contract, a much more manageable contract to a guy that does what you actually need on defense in terms of getting after the passer, and you save the 2 first-round picks. This isn't like maybe slimy, yes, but it's not dumb. This is genius-level intellect. Hey, we still have a buffer after we make this trade. We have a defined date on when we have to follow through with this. Right now, this is a handshake deal. And if you're going to make a handshake deal and then all of a sudden you sleep on it and you don't like the deal anymore, back out of it. They did the right thing. They're just now cosplaying and trying to do this like weird, I don't even know if it's victim thing, but like this weird emotional, like, oh, you know, it's not you, it's me. No, it was you. Just accept it and then embrace it. The name of the game is to win games here in the NFL. You don't get paid by being the nice guy. And I'm kind of tired of this fake facade of the Ravens, of them being like this great organization that is of high class and high character. I don't look at them like that. And you shouldn't look at them like that because they're not that. They just had one head coach for 18 years. And I feel like that has heavily influenced the way that most of us look at the Ravens. Because John Harbaugh, in a land of head coaches where some of them are not very likable, John Harbaugh is a very likable dude. And like even inside his own family, most people, I feel like, would gravitate more towards John Harbaugh than Jim Harbaugh. And we have convinced ourselves that because he was at the helm of the Ravens for such a long time, that they are a premier example of what you should be in the NFL. And, oh, there is nobody that is of more character than and class than the Ravens. And I've never believed that. I never have. They're weird just like every other organization is weird. They do sideways things just like every other organization does sideways things. This isn't even the first time they've done something like this. They tried to sign Ryan Grant, a wide receiver, years ago to a contract. All of a sudden, a better wide receiver came available that they thought fit with their operation was a little bit better by the name of Michael Crabtree. Maybe you've heard of him. And they said, we're done on the Ryan Grant. We're going to say, physical. We're not going to do this. And then we're going to go get Michael Crabtree instead because we feel like he's better. Now Crabtree was fine with Baltimore. It's not like he was expected to be awesome when he came out of college, and he just never really reached that particular level. I feel like he's more well-known in NFL circles for being on the receiving end of that Richard Sherman pipe bomb promo that he cut after the NFC Championship game now almost 12 years ago, which if that doesn't make you feel old, I don't know what will. But they've done this before. They just need to open up and be themselves. You know, I remember this was years ago, and we'll kind of cross over sports here, if you don't mind. I remember watching an interview with LeBron James when he was years into the Miami tenure. And they were asking him about year number one. And if you weren't around, if you didn't care, I feel like the NBA was just in a better spot in terms of national appeal at that time. But one of the reasons it was in a better spot because of the national appeal was because of LeBron James. And you had this villain. You had this player that was homegrown and left his homegrown team and did it very publicly to go team up with two other All-Stars in a move that at the time was unprecedented, right? It was very easy to look at Miami and to look at LeBron James and say, I hate him. I hate them. And in this interview that I was watching, I forget who it was with, so I apologize. I think it was with ESPN, but I don't remember. But in this interview, LeBron opened up and he said, we had to learn how to be the villain. Because in every single building that we walked into, we were hated. And we didn't know how to deal with that. So when you think back on that final series with the Dallas Mavericks, what you're seeing is a team that doesn't understand what their identity is, because in their minds, they're positioning themselves as, we're the good guys. We are the Miami Heat. It's me. It's D-Wade. It's Bosh. And we are here to like make basketball fun again and save it and all these things, right? We're going to win championships. This is going to be awesome. We're the new dynasty. And then they get beat because nobody really knew what they were. LeBron had an awful final series. That's like the one big stain, I think, on his career resume, is that final series was atrocious. But then the next year happened. And then the year after that. And they bulldozed everybody. And why was that? Because they said, hey, if you're going to hate us, we're going to make you hate us. And we will play this role of the villain. And once we know what we are from an identity standpoint, it's going to be over. Baltimore should be learning from the mistakes of that Miami Heat team and just play the role of the villain. Hey, we did a weird bit with the trade here. We kind of screwed over the Las Vegas Raiders. Good. Because our success is not built off of their happiness. Why would we give 2 first-round picks away when we could just keep both of our first-round picks, sign Trey Hendrickson for less money that ultimately in the long term we would have had to pay for Max Crosby? And oh, by the way, if you watched our defense in 2025, what were we atrocious at? Getting after the quarterback. We were 30th in the NFL in sacks. What were we halfway decent at playing the run? Because Baltimore actually did do a pretty decent job when it came to run defense and playing the run. Trey Hendrickson is not very good at playing the run. Anyone that's going to sit up here and tell you that Trey Hendrickson is a great run stuffer is lying to you. But damn it, that guy can get after a quarterback. And he can get after a quarterback in big games. When Cincinnati went to the Super Bowl in that matchup against Los Angeles, there's been a lot of eyes on the Joe Burrow stuff, right, as there should be, because Burrow was excellent. Jamar Chase was excellent. There was the storyline of Joe Burrow being excellent despite the fact that the offensive line was not. But you know who was also really excellent in that run? Trey Hendrickson. Because in big games, he makes big plays. And he did the same thing in New Orleans. So now if you're Baltimore, you're getting a guy that you know can, 1, get after the quarterback, and 2, he is not afraid of the big lights. In fact, he kind of excels in the big lights. When it's a big-time game and a gotta-have-it moment, Trey Hendrickson on defense is going to be somewhere around the football. He's shown that over the course of his career. So, yeah, it's a lot better for us to get the big white dude that doesn't wear gloves, that always is making big-time plays, than the lit white dude with a neck tattoo that we don't know if he's fully healthy. And he can smoke a stogie with Shabuzi to celebrate in the club, but we don't know that he's fully healthy. We don't know that he's going to fit what we actually need, which is a dude that can just get after the passer, that can put pressure on quarterbacks like a Joe Burrow, his now former teammate. I mean, the AFC is so littered with great quarterbacks, they vastly outweigh the NFC at that position. We need a guy to make life very, very difficult on like your Drake Mays and your Justin Herberts and Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, these teams that you will perennially see either in late regular season games or in postseason games. They made the right move. They just did it a little unconventionally. And they need to sit up there. And Eric DeCosta, I don't know when we'll actually hear him talk again, which is kind of fine. It's not like I'm desperate to hear the man speak. But I hope when he does speak, he just kind of is like, yeah, look, dude, I did what was best for my organization. I made the bosses upstairs really happy because now we get multiple first-round picks back and we get a guy that makes our defense immediately better. And that was my whole goal in the first place with the Max Crosby thing. And, oh, by the way, Trey Hendrickson asked for $40 million a year, and we gave him $28 million a year. So not only did I do all of that, I did it on a bargain. He really should be getting Employee of the Month in Baltimore. Back to college hoops. Gonzaga guard Jalen Worley is going to stop by the program next. It's Denton Day on Westwood One Sports. Don't go anywhere.
This is Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
It's Denton Day on Westwood One Sports, at the Denton Day on Twitter. Thanks for hanging out with us on a Saturday conference tournament weekend of college basketball. We got some games that have gone final. We got some games that we are keeping our eye on before they go final. We will get back to those, but we are pleased now to be joined by a guy whose ticket is already punched. Gonzaga is going for yet another year. This has become what they do on a regular basis, and their guard, Jalen Worley, is good enough to join us now. Jalen, first and foremost, man, really appreciate you making some time for us. What has this week been like, man? You won a conference tournament. Your tickets punched the NCAA tournament. How's it felt?
It felt amazing. We played against two really good teams, two teams that we played earlier in the season and had really good battles against. So we knew, we had our hands full coming into Vegas. But yeah, it's been amazing. Just the amount of adversity that, that we had to fight even just to get to this point, and just really checking off one of the major goals that we had even coming into the season. It's been everything that you could hope for.
I said in the open, but Gonzaga's been a powerhouse for years now in this space, in the conference tournament, in the West Coast Conference. How do you kind of manage going into a conference tournament knowing that you are the big dog and upholding a standard, but also being smart enough and respectful enough to not overlook anybody that you're taking on?
Yeah, I think really just worrying about our own goals. Because of we getting those 2 wins in the tournament, we were able to get to 30 wins. And even during this amazing run of Gonzaga, right, there's only been maybe 2 handfuls of teams that have done that in the 30-year stretch. So yeah, just setting our own personal goals, right, that we can hold ourselves accountable, which is winning, regular season, obviously winning the conference tournament and, things like that, right? We're trying to go undefeated or trying to win 30 games, like just continuing to bring it back to what we want to accomplish as a group. So it just felt amazing to accomplish 2 of those things.
With this being your first year at the program, what has it been like for you personally, kind of getting accustomed to life on a different coast, moving across the country, and then finding your role with this team?
Oh, it's been really cool because it's been a beautiful combination of, having my own personal goals of what I want to accomplish and the things I want to succeed from a winning standpoint, right? Like what I want to do while I'm here and the type of teams and the type of things I want to be a part of, but also the other side of just like being a sponge and just being able to learn every day. And a part of the reason why I came here and was willing to come across the country is just because I know the pedigree and just the success of this program and Coach Few. So I get a beautiful balance of, wanting to accomplish things, but also just like kind of to a certain extent, just really, the kid in me just being able to just learn and just to like take it all in and understand why this program's been so successful for so long.
You talk about being a sponge and just taking in a wealth of knowledge and information. There aren't many better guys in this particular sport to learn from than Mark Few. What's it been like being coached by him now for an entire season? And what are some of the things that you've learned from him?
What's been really cool as me and Coach Few's relationship has just continued to grow. He just continues to just tell me what he's learned over the process, and just there's certain things that all great players have in common, right? And those things that they do, they don't just do it whenever a game-winning shot is needed or whenever a big stop is needed, right? They do those things every single day, um, and they hold themselves to a team standard, but themselves to an individual standard of, hey, I want to be this, I want to be this type of guy. So this is what comes with that, right? These are the type of plays you're expected to make. These are the type of moments you're supposed to step up in, and these moments you're supposed to lead. So yeah, just really being able to continue to grow our relationship, and him, tell me the different ways I can kind of, take steps to be one of those guys who can, come up really big for us in big time moments. So yeah, just continuing to understand what it takes to be great, and his background, even just being around the USA team, right, seeing some of the best basketball players in the world. He's just telling me about what those guys do on a daily basis, and how I can incorporate it into the player I want to be.
Jalen Warley, Gonzaga, our guest here today on Westwood One Sports. Jalen, talk about practice. What are practices like at Gonzaga? What's the level of competition like?
They're really competitive. Actually, probably the most competitive practices I've ever been a part of since I started playing basketball. And I think one credit is to just the standard that Coach Free holds us to, but I also think there's a really unique team that we have, right? With one, the depth, and two, um the maturity in terms of just our age, but even just, I mean, as you've seen in Vegas, right? Like, even our younger guys are some of our most talented guys, right? So when you combine having one of the oldest teams, but even your young guys, are ready to play and ready to compete, right? Like, you got 12, 13, 14 dudes in the gym who are just, pushing each other to get better. So I give a lot of credit to just, like, for me, I got to match up with Braden Huff every day. And I think that just pushed me to be a better player all through the summer, going into preseason, so that, by the time you get to games, it's almost easier than it is to go against the guys that you go and practice.
What's it been like playing alongside and getting to know Graham Ike?
It's been amazing, right? Like, kind of what I was talking about earlier, just like learning about what great players do, and I get an example of it every day, right? I get to see what one of the best Gonzaga players, but just one of the best like college players really ever, in my opinion, right? I don't know how high you want to put him on that list, but he's got to be one of the best, college players ever, just with his statistics, his success, and just like, if you spend some time with him, you'll realize he's an even better person than he is a player. So yeah, we've really actually grown our relationship. I probably call him one of my best friends out here. And just continuing to learn from him. But hey, like, I want to also walk away from here and feel like I helped him get better, right? So just telling him what I see, whether that's challenging him on the court, we're matched up against each other on the same team, just right, like, never taking the drill lightly, just attacking every single day. It's been really cool to be a part of his team and just continue to watch our relationship grow.
Now, Graham Ike joined us on Westwood One Sports earlier this year, and in that conversation, we found out that he's an avid paddleboarder. Have you ever gone paddleboarding with him?
I have not, but he's a pretty talented guy. Like, I've never seen him play, but I am willing to bet he's pretty good at it. There's not too many things I've seen him struggle with. So yeah, I think he'll be pretty good at it.
What's the plan for a watch party when the brackets get revealed on Sunday?
Oh, we'll probably all spend some time together, get some food, bring our families around, and really just, it'll be a mix of celebrating the success that we've had, but also finally finding out who our first games will be during March Madness, which was obviously a big goal of ours coming into the season. So yeah, I think it'll be a beautiful combination of celebrating, but also just almost kind of locking in on what it's going to take to accomplish more of our goals.
Jalen Warley, my guest here, guard for Gonzaga, Denton Day on Westwood One Sports. Jalen, we've talked a lot about what has happened already this week, but in front of us is the NCAA tournament. What is your level of excitement getting to live out I'm sure, a lifelong dream of playing in the tournament and then getting the opportunity to do so at a powerhouse like Gonzaga?
I think exactly what you said. Like, it really has been a dream of mine for so long. And what's been great about this group is that we're just so immersed in the moment, right? We just, like you said, we never want to take a team lightly because, we don't want to lose, right? We don't want to have any slip ups. We want to continue to get better. So I haven't even really been looking through the season of kind of just waiting for March. We've just been enjoying every single moment, every single game. So now that it's finally here, it's crazy to think about, but we're going to continue to approach it how we've been all season, right? Just putting our best foot forward. And at the end of the day, it's about us winning the game. So whatever's going to take for us to stack some games and to make a really far run and ultimately get to the national championship, we're all here for it.
Jalen, I'll get you out of here on this. So when that day comes, right, NCAA tournament time, it's game number 1. You're rolling up to the arena. What are you listening to? What's the vibes in the headphones? Are you listening to music that really hypes you up? Is it more of a slow pace to kind of get you in the zone? What are we listening to?
Yeah, I'm probably going more calmer music in my own headphones. I listen to music on the bus ride over, really calm music. But then when I get there, I'm usually locked in, and I leave my fate in the hands of the DJ. So whoever's there, I let them kind of just dictate the music. But yeah, I'm versatile. So whether it's whatever type of music they play, I'll find a way to kind of vibe to it and just help me concentrate on getting ready for the game.
Jalen, really appreciate it, man. Congratulations on the success that you guys have had, and all the best this upcoming week in the NCAA tournament, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on.
That's Jalen Warley joining us here on Westwood One Sports. I'm Denton Day. Great conversation. I mean, he was a really, really awesome guy, and to kind of hear and help share part of his story was a whole lot of fun. Gonzaga is very much in, we're just kind of sitting and waiting mode, right? This kind of is what happens with them every single year because the West Coast Conference plays its conference tournament significantly earlier than the Power Four conferences and some of those other mid-majors that we have seen played out over the past couple of days and that we will see, at least in the A-10, play out tomorrow, right? So they get to kind of sit and hang out and really scout almost, right? Like you're watching a bunch of these teams and seeing like, all right, if we had to pick, like, what side of the bracket do we want to fall on? Do we want to be on the same side as Arizona? No, you probably don't want to be on the same side as Arizona. Do we want to be on the same side as Duke? Yes, you probably do. I mean, like, if you had to pick, right, because Gonzaga is going to be either a 3 or a 4. Certain bracketologists have them as a 4 seed. Certain bracketologists have them as a 3 seed. What you should be rooting for is to be in the bracket. Doesn't really matter what the seed is, but to be on the same side of the bracket as Duke, the team that is hurt, their team that right now has one good point guard in Caden Boozer. I want them. If I had to pick between any of the potential 1 seeds of Arizona and Duke, those 2 teams we know are going to be 1 seeds, potentially Florida, although with what happened to them today against Vanderbilt, maybe that's a little bit more up in the air. They felt like Florida did, the one team that maybe wasn't fully solidified as a one-line team. And because not only they lost to Vanderbilt, but the way that they lost to Vanderbilt opens up the door for anybody else to jump them. Houston to potentially jump them. UConn to potentially jump them, right? When you lose by 16 against a team that's a good team in Vanderbilt, but not a great team in your conference tournament, that leaves wiggle room for your placement. So we don't know if Florida is going to be a 1 seed, but if you're Gonzaga or anybody that's a 3 or 4 for that matter, you're hunting Duke because guards win in March. Gonzaga has good guard play. Duke's guard play right now is hurt. And if Caden Boozer gets himself in a position, who, by the way, I think Caden Boozer's a good player. This isn't a knock on him. But if he gets himself into a position where he gets into foul trouble, or God forbid he gets hurt, but we'll just stick with the foul trouble bit here, right? If he gets himself into foul trouble, Duke is then putting a lineup on the floor that is very unorthodox. And you're having somebody come up and handle the basketball that is not used to or not accustomed to handling the basketball. I want that team if I'm Gonzaga, right? Now, I look at the bracketologists, and that is not happening for them in any of these guys. Bracketology is such a weird game. I got a lot of respect for the people that are in this, the way that, like, your Lenardis, CBS, who I don't think it's Jerry Palm anymore, but whoever runs it for CBS, Mike DeCourcy for Fox, here on the Westwood One Sports Network. We got Brad Evans, who does a great job with the bracketology. Like, I got a lot of respect for the guys that do the bracketology stuff because it feels like there's a lot of ever-changing stuff going on there, and it's so many numbers, and how do certain numbers compute with other numbers and make sense of it, and all of these different things. It did feel like maybe a couple of years ago that it was a pretty ironclad science. Hey, what was your net ranking? Hey, what was your KenPom ranking? All right, that's pretty much going to tell the story. You can kind of derive who is going to be what. based off of the combination of those two rankings. But now you get in so many more numbers and so many other rankings, and everybody has a ranking, just like everybody has a bracket and all these different things. So I kind of looked and I wanted to compile, all right, what are people saying about Gonzaga? Lenardi has Gonzaga as a 3 seed in the West. They'd be playing with Arizona as a 1 seed, and that Michigan State would be their 2 seed. That seems like a very, very tough bracket. I feel like I kind of like Gonzaga over Michigan State, but that's just me. But the bracket itself, hey, that's a pretty tough bracket. CBS has them as a 4 seed with Arizona as the 1, with Michigan State as the 2, and then UVA, who's going to play tonight against Duke in the ACC championship game in about 15, 20 minutes. UVA's the 3 seed in that line, meaning Gonzaga again would be the 4. That's according to CBS. On 3 is something pretty similar. On 3 is Gonzaga as the 4 seed in the South, with Florida as the number 1. Now, this was put out before Florida lost to Vanderbilt, so we'll see, how that plays out. But Florida is the 1. UConn is the 2. UConn right now in action against St. John's in the Big East tournament final. They're down by 9. Again, that's a situation that we will monitor, because if UConn loses to St. John's, maybe their position is on the 2 line might be a little up for grabs, although I don't think that UConn's really falling too far off of a 2 line. But they have UConn as the 2, Illinois as the 3, with Gonzaga being the 4. That feels like a tough bracket, though maybe you like Gonzaga over a team like Illinois. And then Jerry Palm is something very similar to that of Lenardi, with Gonzaga as the 3, Arizona 1, Michigan State as the 2. So there's a lot of options for Gonzaga. Graham Ike, who we talked about with Jalen in that interview, has been one of the best players this entire season in college basketball. He's all over these all pro, not all pro, but the All-American teams that have been and are continuing to be put out by major publications and by major media corporations. I mean, he's been really, really excellent, but we know it's guard play that is really going to separate the teams that have a chance at winning a championship versus the teams that have a chance on winning a couple of games. And I would love it for Mark Few to get his championship, right? I mean, he has been close a number of different times, and it always feels like it gets ripped away at the last second. So I would love to see him get the opportunity to get that. I can't wait for this bracket to be put out. I'm not a bracket on a Sunday guy. I kind of wait. I usually fill a bracket out on like a Monday or a Tuesday. However, if you want to test your bracket skills, as many of you know, maybe some of you don't, I'm a part of the Westwood One Sports Night team, and we are doing a bracket challenge. So if you want to go and be a part, go to CBS Sports, search Westwood One Sports Night, and you'll be able to find our bracket pool. You get 1 entry, hop on in there, and then showcase what you got from a bracket perspective. You'll get to battle up against Linnell Willingham and Josh Graham and me and really everybody else that's a part of the Westwood One family, because everyone's going to be in that bad boy. So find us on CBS. It's on our Twitter pages as well. You can find me on Twitter at The Denton Day. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at Westwood One Sports Night. We're on a race to 1,000 subscribers. We want to get there by the end of the NCAA tournament. So go find the YouTube channel, subscribe to us. You'll see shorts, you'll see long-form content. Subscribe, Westwood One Sports Night. Search it on YouTube, and it'll pop right up. When we get back, we're going to take a trip around college basketball. You will hear some of the crazy finishes that took place in the sport today, and then we'll keep you posted on the Big 12 championship, the Big East championship, and then get you set for the ACC championship that's going to tip off in about 13 minutes. We do that next with Denton Day on Westwood One Sports Night.
Chaos. The Ravens backed out of their trade for Max Crosby. Will he return to the Raiders, or will the elite pass rusher be traded again to another team? We'll let you know what happens next and what it means in this historic saga. Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
We're hanging out Westwood One Sports. You can join our conversation. You can tweet me at the Denton Day. We got a talk text line 310-840-4910. 310-840-4910. If you want to weigh in on any of the conversation that we have had throughout the course of the first portion of our show, you are welcome to do so. We'll hang out. We'll chop it up. We'll have a good time. College basketball has been excellent today. Like really, really excellent. You know, I love the month of March the way that most of you love the month of March. I mean, you're probably not listening to sports radio in the month of March if you don't love college basketball, because this is when college hoops shines, right? And I'm watching the Big 12 championship right now, and this is a heavyweight fight between Arizona and Houston. We got a 3-point game with 53 seconds left to go. I mean, if this doesn't get you jazzed up, like, I don't know what does. This is just epic. And I love watching good basketball teams play great basketball against one another. And we saw that a little bit today with, like, your Michigan and Wisconsin. I thought Wisconsin pushed Michigan really, really well. They put up a really, really good effort, and Michigan was just on a game winner, able to push forward and get to the Big Ten championship, to where they will now face off against the Boilermakers of Purdue. I was watching Purdue and UCLA today, and I've been in this, like, weird space with Purdue because I don't really like them. I love Matt Painter, but I think the team this year, it doesn't move me to where I look at them and I say, this has the potential of being a really, really great team. I think last year's team was better. I think 2 years ago, the team was better. Really, any team with Zach Edey was better than what they have this year. But the way that they have played in the Big Ten tournament is kind of showcasing, hey, this is what Purdue can be. And this is the team that Matt Painter, this is what he can have as a team. And when it comes down to late game scenarios, situational basketball, there's not a ton of coaches across the sport that I trust more than Matt Painter. And I know he doesn't have a championship on the resume. I get that. He has the unfortunate mark of being one of only two guys to lose to a 16 seed as a 1 seed. But I think from just an X's and O's coaching perspective, he's one of the best. So to see Purdue play the way that they have over the past few games, and really, the game against UCLA today was fine. They should they have beaten UCLA by more than they did? Yes, is the answer to that. But seeing the way that Purdue played against Nebraska was really kind of the turning point for me to be, all right, the team that at one point lost 6 of 11, and the reason they were so far down the rankings in the Big Ten was because of that streak, where it felt like they just couldn't find any rhythm. They didn't have their feet underneath of them. They couldn't put point. Like, they were just getting beat up by the grind that is the Big Ten. Now I'm a little bit more of a believer. Just a little bit. Not a lot of it. Just a little bit. But I'm excited to see tomorrow Michigan and Purdue, because it's always felt like to me that those are the two best teams in the conference, or the teams that have the best opportunity to win a championship in the conference. I'm not a believer in Nebraska. Maybe you can throw Michigan State into there and it'll be like a love triangle. It's Michigan State, and Purdue. It's the love triangle of, can these teams win the NCAA tournament out of the Big Ten? Love is Blind Big Ten edition. It's just those 3 teams, right? Maybe Love is Thruple Big Ten edition. It's those 3 teams. But I want to see how Michigan stacks up against Purdue, but I really want to see how Purdue stacks up against Michigan. Because, right, if you're Michigan, if you can't beat Purdue, then why would I bet you to win a national championship? Why would I put you in my bracket to win a national championship? You're going to be a 1 seed, but why would I have faith in you to run the table if you can't beat Purdue? Whereas on the flip side, if Purdue can mess around and beat Michigan, you're like, whoa. This team that was terrible like 2 weeks ago is all of a sudden they're back. Like, they're in their bag a little bit and they're getting hot at the right time. And that's really what March Madness is all about. It's just about who can play their best basketball for 6 games in a row. Is the tournament the most effective way of determining a proper champion? No, it's not. It's never been designed to be that. It's been designed to be madness, hence the reason we call it March Madness, right? It's just about who can win 6 games in a row, or really, who cannot screw up in one of 6 games. Because all it takes is one screw up of not defending a 5'9" white dude that looks like me, who's just pulling from 30 feet, and all of a sudden your season is over. So I'm excited about the Big Ten championship. Update on the Big 12. It's a 5-point game now with 22 seconds left. This is gonna be fun down the stretch. I really love this Houston team. I mean, you want to talk about coaches that are really deserving or have been like so close to winning a national championship, Kelvin Sampson is right up there at the top. It's Sampson, right? It's Painter, it's Few. Those are kind of like the three. I'm really enjoying watching Houston play basketball. Now, I say that after just watching them miss about 4 layups. That's not an exaggeration. They missed 4 layups right at the basket with an opportunity to cut the lead from 5 to 3. Missed three or 4 layups. I think it was 3. But you miss all these damn layups, and then you foul Arizona with 13.1, puts you in a tough spot. But I still love Houston. I think they play with a level of physicality that most teams outside of the Big 12 are not ready for. I really think the Big 12 is going to dominate March. I think the Big 12, Houston's going to the line, so they have an opportunity still to cut this to 3. They just wasted a little bit of seconds as long as you make your free throws. But I really feel like the Big 12, top to bottom, has been the best conference this entire year. And I think all of the teams inside of the Big 12 have been the most battle-tested this entire year. Because you have a team like Houston that plays with a level of physicality that you're not going to see from most other teams in the NCAA tournament. You have a team like Arizona that can hit you from so many different angles that not everybody else has in the NCAA tournament. Then you factor in your Iowa States and your Kansases with Darryn Peterson and being able to defend a high-level guard, understanding that in the month of March, guards win you games. Every team that wins a national championship has had really good to really great guard play. That's like a requirement to be successful. And you had games, plural, going up against Darryn Peterson, one of the best guards, or hopefully you've had some games. Maybe you haven't because of the cramping situation that he's been dealing with. But you've gotten to see him up close and personal, and you're now prepared for some of the other guards that you're going to see who are not nearly as talented as Darryn Peterson. And, oh, by the way, there's this 6'7" Mormon giant who is the best player in college basketball in AJ DeBonsta. Right? So you got to go like 5 tiers down, 5 teams down in the Big 12 before you get to the best player in college basketball in AJ DeBonsta, who has been dominating the second half of the season. Far and away the best player, athletic freak, can shoot the basketball. You have experience against that. Like, you're not going to see that when you match up against a team in the ACC that's not Duke, especially now that Duke is hurt. You're just not going to see that. That's not nearly as threatening to you if you've squared off against Houston, if you squared off against Iowa State. So I have a full expectation that the winner of the national championship is more likely than not going to be a Big 12 team. And that kind of excites me, right? Like I'm in this process where I'm scouting the same way that you are scouting. Hey, am I really going to take Houston to win this whole thing? Maybe some of that depends on what we're going to see in this last 11 seconds in a 3-point game with Arizona up above Houston. What we see in the ACC championship is also going to play a big time factor in this. Because what is Boozer going to look like? What is UVA going to be able to do against this Duke team? A Duke team that took them to the cleaners a couple of weeks ago, but now it's not the same Duke team. If UVA loses the ACC, we got to stop and pause any conversation about the ACC being back. Because if nobody can beat Duke while Duke is playing at a massive disadvantage with only one real point guard, but no depth at the point guard position, how can we call that conference the best conference? You're telling me nobody has a good guard? You're telling me nobody can figure out the code for Boozer? You've seen him multiple times a season. And if you haven't seen him up close and personal, because UVA and Duke did this really good job of avoiding one another in the regular season, but you got a lot of game film on the guy. And if you can't overcome that, I can't subscribe to the ACC being back at the top of the pedestal the way that it felt like they were a couple of weeks ago when UVA was balling at a very UVA historic rate. When Caleb Wilson was fully healthy. I mean, injuries have just undercut the mess out of the ACC. Houston is making all sorts of problems, and they're going to lose this game. With 1.9 seconds left, they're down 5. They had an opportunity, I thought, maybe to get a good quality shot. Arizona did a great job trapping and putting ball pressure on, and Houston just had no answer for that. So Arizona's going to win the Big 12 championship by 5. They should be the number 1 team. When we get the brackets unveiled tomorrow, Arizona should be the number 1 overall seed in the tournament. Nobody is playing better basketball than they are. They've gone through the gauntlet that is the Big 12. They were in some close ones. Obviously, last night was a close one. This one wasn't as close. It wasn't as, shall we say, heart rate jumping the way that the game on Friday night was, but there's nobody that is playing better basketball right now than the Arizona Wildcats. They should be the number one overall seed, and I'm expecting them to be the number one overall seed when we get the brackets unveiled tomorrow. But that was a fun basketball game. And now you know what I get to do? I get to go flip over to the Big East, right? It's just one basketball game after another. This conference championship Saturday is just a whole bundle of joy. It's just so much fun because you're getting all good teams. Josh Graham has tried to convince both myself and Linnell Willingham this entire week that conference championship week is actually better than the first week of the NCAA tournament. And I'm starting to see the vision. I don't fully buy it yet because the first weekend of the NCAA tournament is a fire hose of madness. I've called it, it's like a crack hit because it's just one thing after another after another. I don't have experience with crack, but I've heard stories. It's just one thing after another after another. All this, there's one upset, then there's another upset, and you're in like this flow state of basketball to where you're just kind of weaving between all of these games over the course of 4 days, and then you get to the second week, and you hit the wall, right? Again, I don't have experience with hard drugs, but I've heard enough stories to know that when you take yourself off of them, you kind of hit a wall a little bit. That feels like the second week where it's not as fluid, right? It's not as big of a fire hose, but then you get better games. But what we've gotten the past 2 days from conference championship weekend has been nothing short of epic. And it kind of matches up with the argument that Josh is trying to make in that you're getting high-quality basketball and seasons are ending. Guys are their years are done. Some college careers are done. And damn, I just turned on the Big East Championship, and it's way less entertaining than what we saw in the Big 12. St. John's is up 16 points right now, and they are just beating the brakes off of UConn at the moment with under 5 minutes to play. That is depressing. What else is depressing is that Pitino's not in all white. I feel like if Rick Pitino at St. John's gets to the Big East Championship, played in Madison Square Garden, or I guess is this in Madison? Yeah, it's in Madison Square Garden. He should be wearing the all white. I need that dude standing there like Kingpin on the sideline, looking like a mobster. I want him in all white. He's just in like a regular suit. That's boring AF, Rick Pitino. I teased this. I'm going to pay it off when we get back. One of the craziest finishes that you saw happened today in the Atlantic 10. I'll play that for you. We'll react to it together. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. I'm Denton Day. It's Westwood One Sports. Don't go anywhere.
Conference tournaments are happening now. Who's in? Who's out? And how should it impact your bracket? March Madness is upon us on your official home of the NCAA tournament. Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
We're hanging out Westwood One Sports on a Saturday, Denton Day, a.k.a. D-Day. You can connect with me on Twitter at The Denton Day or by hitting us up on our talk text line 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. We're moments away from tip-off in the ACC Championship between Duke and UVA. We just saw Arizona beat Houston in the Big 12 Championship. St. John's is going to beat UConn. They're up by 23 points. Sorry, bad math. But it doesn't really matter. UConn is getting blitzed right now by St. John's. There was a conversation to be had maybe that with Florida's loss today against Vanderbilt, if UConn would have performed really, really well against St. John's, a team that they'd beaten up already this season, that maybe they would have a claim for the final 1 seed, right? With Duke being a 1 seed, Arizona being the tournament's number 1 overall seed, at least I think they should be, and then Michigan, so that final 1 spot is up for grabs. Maybe it could have been UConn. maybe it could have been Houston if Houston upset Arizona today, because Arizona had a 1 seed locked up. I think Florida is thanking their lucky stars, if they actually wanted to be a 1 seed, in that they're still going to be the 1 seed, because UConn couldn't handle it with St. John's, and Houston could not get the better of Arizona. I've teased this now twice, and I need to pay it off. I need to be good at radio here. This is the most college basketball we're going to be talking. We got to talk college basketball, really, at this rate, right? We got to squeeze it all in. I don't often watch the A-10, but when I do, it's the month of March. And when I do in the month of March, at least on the 14th, March 14th of 2026, it was a great decision. The final, 30 seconds between Dayton and St. Louis, the 4 seed and the 1 seed in the A-10 semifinal, was nothing short of epic. I want you to hear this sound, the back and forth between the two squads that ultimately led to a pretty substantial upset.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get to that sound coming up here momentarily, but it was back and forth. It really was madness. Teams had timeouts. They didn't want to use timeouts. It was just a back and forth affair between Dayton and St. Louis. So we have it now. Listen to this crazy exchange.
They're looking for Durkak underneath. He didn't get there.
Let's drive it.
And now Bennett. Bennett will drive it. Bennett goes up. Shot blocked from behind. Jones with the rebound. Extra pass to Connor for 3.
Whoa!
Yes!
Oh,
14 seconds left to play.
They got a timeout. They got a timeout, Tom.
McContry. 9 seconds. Avila from the middle. It's good!
What a game. It's not over.
Durkak across midcourt. High stepping. 3 seconds left. Goes up. Sweeps. It's tipped by. It's good! It's good!
They got to get off his time on the clock.
Latong tipped it in.
Oh, my goodness.
There's .3 to play. They're looking for Dirk.
I mean, you want to talk about a back and forth and a back and forth. So with 14 seconds left, Dayton's Jacob Connor makes a 3 to put Dayton up 68-66. St. Louis had a timeout. They decided not to use the timeout. And Robbie Avila, you might remember him because he was the guy that took the internet by storm last year with the rec specs at Indiana State. A little bit of a bigger dude, a more burlier individual playing at the alma mater of Larry Bird and balling out at the alma mater of Larry Bird. He was a fun story in the 2024-2025 season. He now plays at St. Louis. Well, he drills a 3 at the top of the key with 6.6 seconds left to put St. Louis up 68-69, and then you heard it with 0.3 seconds remaining. Emil Latong tips a shot in to give Dayton a 70-69 win over St. Louis. Nice for Dayton, not very nice for St. Louis. Now, prior to this game, Joe Lunardi had St. Louis as a 9 seed in the NCAA tournament. I get the feeling that that was based off of the presumption that they were going to win their conference tournament. They might still get in as an at-large team because the A-10 is frequently a multi-bid league, but there's a real chance that Dayton just became a bid stealer. If not from St. Louis, potentially from somebody else, right? Like there's a lot of teams that are on the bubble as we sit here right now that maybe are getting knocked off of the bubble because of the win that Dayton had today, positioning themselves to potentially win the tournament. Now, VCU is also in Lunardi's bracket, right? So you could get multiple bids in from the A-10, a very easy thing to argue for. And VCU is going to be playing Dayton in the championship. That's going to be tomorrow at 1 p.m. But that begs the question, what happens if Dayton wins? Is VCU, who Lunardi has right now as an 11 seed in the South region, is that solidified to the point where they can lose their conference tournament and then still end up getting into the big dance? So we're going to get really big, meaningful basketball tomorrow in the A10 to decipher that. VCU right now, if you are a gambler and a DGen the way that I am, VCU is a 2.5-point favorite. So the expectation is, at least from Vegas, that VCU is going to win the basketball game and then be in, and the last 6 minutes that I've just done on radio are going to amount to absolutely nothing. But there's a very real chance that Dayton is a bid stealer. We almost had another one of those today. The SEC semifinal between Ole Miss and Arkansas going to overtime for Arkansas and John Calipari to win by just 3, 93-90. Ole Miss, who's coached by Chris Beard. Chris Beard has been a sensational college basketball coach for years now. You remember he took Texas Tech to the national championship when they lost to UVA in what was one of the more boring national championship games that you have ever seen. Then left Texas Tech to go to Texas, igniting flames in this rivalry in the state of Texas. Then leaves Texas due to an event that happened off of the floor where he was then cleared, but Texas still decided to move on from him. Now he coaches at Ole Miss. Ole Miss was excellent in 2024, 2025, struggling this year, but they had Arkansas on the ropes, man. And with already Florida out, it's Arkansas and Vanderbilt for the SEC championship tomorrow. Just the way that everybody envisioned it when you thought of the SEC, right? You didn't think of Florida. You didn't think of Bama, Auburn, all of these teams that were awesome last year. No, you thought of Vanderbilt and Arkansas. That's what you're getting tomorrow, but it also means you're getting Darius Acuff. And he has been a player for Arkansas that has really taken the second half of the NCAA tournament, or the second half of the NCAA season, by storm. He's one of the best point guards that you're going to see. He had 24 for Arkansas in their win today on 7 of 21 shooting. The shooting number is not the greatest in the world, but he had over 30 against Oklahoma. I mean, he was knocking on the door of 40 against Oklahoma when Arkansas beat them on Friday. I mean, this dude is hooping. He had 40 earlier. He had almost 50. He had 49 earlier this year against Missouri. He's gone over 40 a couple of times for Arkansas. I mean, he is a guy that is playing at such a high level, and we talk about, right, guards in the month of March. Guards in the month of March. There's not a lot of better point guards that are playing right now than Darius Acuff. I mean, he is just so unbelievable. And look, this is how Calipari builds his teams, right? If you know anything about the years that he spent in Kentucky, there's a whole lot of guards that came through and have gone on to do very, very big things in the NBA. That dude is a wizard when it comes to recruiting guards. Although I will say, if I can just open up a little bit here. I saw a tweet that was making the rounds, and you can tweet me at the Dent Day. I saw a tweet that was making the rounds highlighting all of the great guards that John Calipari coached at Kentucky. It had Devin Booker. It had Tyrese Maxey, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. It was filled. There was like 15 guards on this thing because, again, Calipari does such a great job. But there was one obvious one that was very much missing. This picture that made its way onto my Twitter feed did not have the one that started this whole thing for Calipari at Kentucky. It did not have John Wall on the picture. And that, to me, is asinine. By the way, John Wall going viral right now on Twitter for being a legit hooper. If you're like in the weeds on college basketball, John Wall is the analyst for you. They did this bit on Prime, and John Wall is just rattling off a bunch of dudes in the NBA that are not high-level players and where they went to college. And I got to tell you, that is the biggest breath of fresh air when it comes to just basketball coverage in general, especially when it comes to an NBA guy doing a college bit or just NBA guy talking about NBA players, because so often with what we've been used to in mainstream basketball coverage, it's almost like implied that the people who are analysts don't know everybody that are not superstars. So to see John Wall rattle off a bunch of dudes that are not high-level players and not just, hey, I know who this person is. I remember watching this dude when he was in college because I'm watching college basketball religiously. I mean, round of applause for John Wall. In D.C., we kind of knew this was going to be the case because he's always been like a basketball-aholic. But to now see that transpire on the big stage has been sensational. Update in the ACC championship game. UVA early, taking it to Duke a little bit. 12-6, Virginia leads. Are you getting a little nervous if you're the Duke Blue Devils? You have the best player on the floor in Cam Boozer. There's no doubt about that. But that guard play, and UVA can score this year. We're so unused to it, right? These two teams didn't get to see each other in the regular season. They don't know how each other play. They're still in the feel-out process. I need, and Duke needs, Cam Boozer to have a really big game if they're going to come away with the win here in the ACC tournament and win the ACC championship game. They also need a big game from his brother Caden, who just hit a big 3 to make it 12-9. This game, I think, is going to be significantly better than the Big East championship game. At least I'm hoping and praying that it's going to be significantly better than the Big East championship game. When we get back, I'm Denton Day. I'm going to tell you, sneaky, what I actually think one of the most entertaining free agent signings was in the NFL. It's Westwood One Sports. Don't go anywhere.
This is Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
It's Denton Day on Westwood One Sports, hanging out on a Saturday, having ourselves a great old time. We're going to shift to the NFL here. Just an update in the ACC Championship game. Virginia now with a 1-point lead over Duke. Under 12 timeout. Cam Boozer, 0 points. He's 0 of 3 from the field, but 0 points. His brother Caden has 7 points. So you love that if you're Duke. Caden Boozer playing well. But you know that eventually the tide is going to turn and that Cam Boozer is going to get his. This is kind of a trend that I've noticed of Cam Boozer, that he starts games slow, not in a bad way, but in a way that gets everybody else involved. And then once everybody else is involved, he kind of starts to take over a little bit. That's a nice luxury to have if you're Duke, because you got so many talented pieces around him. But that's going to be something that I'm watching in moving forward here. When that game gets to halftime, Josh Graham is going to jump on with us. He's there in Charlotte watching the game, so we'll get his take from a guy that is live in living person from the ACC Championship game. I want your calls right now at 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. I want to know what one of your favorite free agent signings is. If you had to pick just one, hey, this was the best free agent signing that we saw in the NFL, I want you to give that to me at 310-840-4910. That's a talk or a text line. So phone calls ain't your thing. You can shoot us a text message, leave me your name in the text, and I'll get it out to you. I have to be honest. I had many to choose from here. But one that's been a little sneaky, that I've seen everybody kind of ragdoll around a little bit, and I understand the premise for it. I don't hate Tua Tagovailoa going to the Atlanta Falcons. This is a long play for Atlanta. Do I think that Tua is going to be the day one starter? I do not. Do I think he could be the week 8 starter? Yes, I do. And that's what enthralls me about this signing for Atlanta. I think initially when you see Tua signing with a football team, it didn't matter what football team, but Tua signing with a football team, you kind of point and you laugh, because Tua is not viewed as a good quarterback in the NFL anymore. Mike McDaniel got him to being a good quarterback in the NFL, but as we currently stand here, nobody looks at Tua and says that's a great quarterback in the NFL. But I love the fit in Atlanta because he has weapons surrounding him. You got Drake London on the outside, who is a legitimate number 1 wide receiver. You have arguably the best weapon that any team in the NFL has in your backfield with Bijan Robinson. You got Kyle Pitts. I think Tua is a guy that can take advantage of all of those weapons. He has something that Michael Penix does not. He gets it. I loved Michael Penix coming out of college. I don't know what has happened to him in the NFL. I don't know what finger I can point or who to point the finger at. Maybe it's all pointed at him. Maybe he just hasn't been able to grasp what it means to play quarterback at an exceptionally high level at the NFL level. But he just has not made the transition to the NFL in the way that I thought he would. Because when he was in college, he was known for deep ball accuracy and making good decisions, playing on time, reading through his progressions. Not that he had deep progressions in college because he was playing with Rome Odunze and Jalen McMillan. It's pretty easy to get those guys open. He had Polk on that team as well. Like it's pretty easy for at least one of those dudes to be open relatively quickly into a route, and you know, hey, the ball's going there. That guy beat his man on first step. Ball's going that direction. But I really loved watching him in college. And then again, at the NFL level, it leaves a lot to be desired. In a class of quarterback that he came out in 2024 that's featured an MVP candidate in Drake May, a savior in both Chicago and Washington, with Caleb Williams in Chicago, with Jaden Daniels in Washington. Don't be sleeping on Jaden, by the way. He's coming in He's coming in 2026. The rebound is going to be just as good as the initial first season is. But you have those three guys. You got Bo Nix, who's been to the playoffs in each of his first 2 years. You're looking at yourself saying, I'm kind of at the bottom of the pecking order here in terms of one of the great quarterback classes of all time. And I don't want to be the one that's asked at a trivia question that becomes the trivia question, or becomes rather the answer to the trivia question that nobody knows 15 years from now, when you're saying, hey, who was the other guy drafted with these four awesome quarterbacks? I don't want to be that guy if I'm Michael Penix. So I think in bringing Tua in there, it forces Penix to elevate his game and to rise to the occasion, to say, this is what I can provide to you as a team. These are the things. I know this is a new offense. We're playing on even playing field, me and Tua. I'm learning Stefanski's offense. Tua's learning Stefanski's offense. It's a 50-50 shot. Everybody's going to get a fair shake at it because money is not invested, massive amounts at least, into either one of us. You know, sometimes you bring a new guy in and you already have a lot of money invested in one guy, and maybe the other guy that doesn't have the money invested in him isn't going to get a truly fair shot. And it's going to take a little bit. Like a great example of that is what happened with Michael Penix and Kirk Cousins. So he's kind of on the other side of something that he benefited from when he got drafted. That team had just signed Kirk Cousins to this massive deal, fell in love with Michael Penix, which, by the way, that's organizational malpractice from Atlanta. A bunch of idiots. You don't sign a quarterback. This is 2 years ago. I'm not going to harp on it, but you don't sign a quarterback and then draft a quarterback. That's dumb 101. So maybe this is a curse for Atlanta. But Michael Penix is now on the other side of that. And here's like the real kicker. If you're Michael Penix and you can't beat Tua, we know you are not our guy moving forward. So when bringing Tua Tagovailoa in, the very worst case scenario is that you know you are going to be drafting quarterback in 2027. Because the worst case scenario is that Penix can't beat out Tua, and then Tua's not very good. And it sucks in 2026. But in 2027, it gives you the opportunity to get a legitimately good quarterback that you feel like can be the face of the franchise moving forward. You're like, hey, we love Arch Manning, Sam Levitt, Dante Moore, Lenora Sellers. I mean, the list is going to be lengthy of quarterbacks that come out in 2027. And who knows, doing this song and dance in March of 2026, trying to predict the quarterbacks that are going to be awesome in the college football season, that they'd become top-round draft picks in 2027, is idiotic. We did that in 2026. I thought everybody was going to be tanking for Arch. I thought Dante Moore would be coming out. Instead, it's this guy, Fernando Mendoza, that took over the sport, wins the Heisman, and he's going to be the number one overall pick. But for Atlanta, in signing Tua Tagovailoa, you bring in a guy that is he is answering your quarterback questions. Not with him himself, but he is answering your quarterback questions, and that you are going to know in 2027 whether you currently have your guy or not. And if Penix can't beat out Tua, then Penix ain't your guy. And you know that Tua is not your guy. So it solves everything immediately. Because you know you're going to have to pay Drake London. You know you're going to have to pay Bijan Robinson. And you're more likely to pay Bijan Robinson than London, but I don't think they're going to let Drake London walk. So you're going to pay both of those guys. How would that be easier to stomach? Well, by having a quarterback on a rookie contract for then a couple more years. So you can kind of address positions of need in other spots, but say, hey, you got your quarterback for the long term in 2020, in 2027. I have enjoyed some of the jokes with Tua and Michael Penix about them both being left-handed. Yeah, I'm a lefty. I don't throw lefty. I'm like one of those weird lefties, though, to where I write with my left hand, but I don't do anything athletic. Well, I don't do much athletic anymore at 30 years old anyway. But if I'm like shooting a basketball, I shoot right-handed. If I throw right-handed. If I kick a soccer ball of some kind, which I don't do very often, but if I did, I would kick with my right foot, but I write left-handed. And because I write left-handed, that makes me a lefty. So I stand the lefties. I want to see Tua do well. I want to see Michael Penix do well. I do believe into this weird myth that maybe left-handed quarterbacks, it's a little bit more difficult to be good at the NFL because of like the ball spin. Really, I think it's more of like angles. I think that just the ball is coming from a slightly different direction and coming from slightly different angles. Not the spin of the ball, just the way that the ball is traveling through the air. That can maybe be a little bit sideways for wide receivers and for pass catchers. But I think the signing of Tua Tagovailoa is not the worst thing in the world. In fact, it has become one of the more intriguing moves that have been made by any NFL team in free agency. I'd love to know yours. 310-840-4910. 310-840-4910. That's the Westwood One Sports Talk text line. So give us a phone call. My guy Josh in our Culver City studios will take good care of you. Or shoot us a text. Just leave your name at the bottom of the text message so I can read it on air. In fact, we have a text message. This one comes from Tim in Haymarket. He said, my favorite free agent move is none of them. Football is 5 months away. Who cares? Fair enough, Tim, but I still do care. Football it's ongoing in this particular world that we live in. It's ongoing. I'm going to talk about the World Baseball Classic. Don't you worry about that, Tim. We spent a lot of time talking about March Madness today on the program as well, so I hope you were intrigued and locked into that conversation, Tim. But everybody cares about football. The NFL keeps this country moving forward, my friend. ACC update, Duke is now taking the lead, and Cam Boozer has still not scored a point. That should be terrifying if you are UVA, because you're like, oh no. Oh, these dudes are hooping right now, are the Duke Blue Devils. I am kind of pulling for Virginia, though. I feel like you have to be. Do people still hate Duke the way that they once did, or was that more of a Coach K thing than it was a brand thing? Was it because they constantly won championships? Is John Shire more likable than Coach K? Maybe that's a better call question, since apparently nobody cares about football anymore. Is John Shire more likable? We've had John Shire on Westwood One Sports Night, which if you're not subscribed to the Westwood One Sports Night YouTube channel, be sure to go and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We've had John Shire on. I happen to enjoy the conversation, but I was also just happy that the Duke coach was on. The bosses were happy that the Duke coach was on, so that makes me happy. So Duke's up now over Virginia. We're going to keep you monitored on that one. Josh Graham is going to join us from halftime or at halftime from the stadium once that one goes to the half. We do have World Baseball Classic tomorrow. It's Team USA versus the Dominican. It's Paul Skeens versus Luis Severino on the mound. And I saw a tweet that was hilarious. It's Paul Skeens essentially facing the Dominican Avengers because the lineup for the DR is insane. Now, thank God Paul Skeens is arguably the best pitcher in baseball right now. And he's been on an absolute tear going back to just the baseball season. So there's no one that I would rather have on the mound as an American than Paul Skeens. But you know what really kind of worries me a little bit? The World Baseball Classic, as far as I'm concerned, is supposed to be fun. is supposed to be loose. You're playing with guys that you don't normally get to play with because you're all on different teams across Major League Baseball. But you're also putting on for your country. And you want to showcase your country. Nobody has done a better job of that than the DR. They are partying every single time they're on the field. They get to the clubhouse. What are they doing? They are partying when they get to the clubhouse. It's like the best time in the world is hanging out with the dudes from the Dominican Republic. And that worries me a little bit because I've often found, at least in baseball, in MLB, that the teams that are having the most fun off of the field are the ones that are playing the best on the field. And there's been like this weird sense of confusion with Team USA, with the manager not knowing that they hadn't qualified yet because he thought they already had qualified. And thankfully, they still ended up qualifying to get to the point where they are now, to get to the elimination portion of it. But the Mark DeRosa didn't know, and that was really weird. And it feels like there's like this oddity that is surrounding Team USA. Just like for whatever reason, it's just like slightly off. Like, you ever seen a line that's slightly off? It's not perfect. You're like, that's bothering me just a little bit. There's like something there with Team USA. And I watched Dominican Republic, and they are just smashing. They're just having the best time of their life. I'm concerned about that one. They're partying where, like, Team USA is, look, man, like a dude came into the locker room and told the story about, like, killing Osama bin Laden. And that's, like, a cool thing to have, I don't know, in, like, a preseason in Major League Baseball. Does that really get you hyped up to play baseball? Maybe I'm weird. I got a hell of a lot of respect for the troops. I don't know if right before I go play a baseball game that I need to hear about a dude killing Osama bin Laden. I'm good. Can I get some party in the USA? Can I go out there happy and fun? I'm not going out there to kill Canada. I'm not going out there to kill the Dominican. I just want to go out there and play some baseball. So that kind of, like, maybe that's one of the things that is, like, weirded me out a little bit. In a celebration of culture where they're, like, dancing and partying and all these other teams are dancing and having a good time and, like, they're showcasing their culture. Team USA is getting talked to by a guy that killed a guy. Is that our culture here? It's like, hey, our culture is just, we like to kill people that do us wrong. And I'm like, whoa, play the Miley Cyrus. I want to party in the USA a little bit more than I want to do that. Josh Graham's going to join us at halftime from the ACC Championship game, Duke and UVA. When we get back, we're going to do some power rankings. Myself and Ben Strober, the producer of this show, we're going to give you the 5 teams that have had the best free agency in the NFL. We do it next. It's Denton Day on Westwood One Sports. Don't go anywhere.
This exact time last year, the Seahawks signed their eventual Super Bowl winning QB, Sam Darnold. Which free agent signing could make the same impact? We'll tell you about the NFL moves you need to know. Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
It's Westwood One Sports Denton Day on the program. We got you for about 90 more minutes here on a Saturday. World Baseball Classic. We were talking about USA and the Dominican that'll take place tomorrow. Well, Venezuela and Japan are duking it out. Acuna hits a bomb off of Yamamoto, and then Shohei hits a bomb. So it's two superstars that are just going back and forth and back and forth. That's awesome to see. I know the baseball junkies are loving this. I do feel like the timing of it isn't the best in the world, but I realize you don't really have another place to put it. But going up against March Madness is a little tougher, but it's been awesome so far. I think you're going to have a lot of people locked into Team USA and the Dominican tomorrow. I'm going to be locked in to Team USA and the Dominican. But right now, we're going to shift to the NFL. Josh Graham's going to join us once the ACC Championship gets to halftime, so that's coming up here shortly. And we're going to shift to the NFL as I welcome on the producer of the show, the mighty Ben Strober, and we're going to go and do some power rankings, right? It's the NFL free agency, the NFL offseason. So what we're going to do is we're going to power rank our five best teams that have had, or the five teams that have had the best free agency classes, right? It's not who we think is the best right now, but the teams that have had the best free agency classes. So we'll go 5-1 here. I have my list. Ben has his list. So without further ado, I'm going to start at the bottom here, Ben. I'm going to go with number 5. This one was easy for me. It's the Baltimore Ravens, and it solely relies on one person, and that person is Trey Hendrickson. They recognized in Baltimore, We have an apparent need at defensive end because we couldn't get after the passer. We were 30th in the NFL in sacks. We need to change that. We don't want Max Crosby. Well, we kind of did, but now we don't. We're going to go get Trey Hendrickson, who is the best pure pass rusher that is available in free agency, and we're going to get him at a relative discount. He was asking for $40 million a year. We got him for $28 million a year. He has a history of making big plays in big-time games. They signed other players, but really their ranking on this list is solely determined by the signing of Trey Hendrickson. So with that, I got Baltimore at number 5.
I also put Baltimore at number 5 on this list. And I think when you're an organization like Baltimore that's done pretty much nothing but compete and win a ton of games over the last 15 or 20 years or so, even though you blow out John Harbaugh in the offseason, you bring in a really great defensive mind in Jesse Minter. And I think getting Trey Hendrickson, as you mentioned, that's like what headlines this entire free agency class. I think he was the number 1 free agent on my board, period, going into this entire period. So for Baltimore to get him at a discount, I think is a testament to how good that organization has been for such a long time. They were kind of able to underpay a player, I think, that brings premium value to that team. And, man, it doesn't get any better for Joe Burrow, does it? The lethal group of pass rushers that he has to go up against here in the AFC North. But a sneaky move they also made, signing Jalen Hawkins as safety, I believe is a 1-year, $5 million deal. I think that's pretty good value for him as well, to play alongside Hamilton or wherever he may fit in the depth chart there. So I really like what Baltimore's done, actually, here in this free agency period.
Yeah, they've had a very nice run, so we both got them at number 5. Moving up the list, we're doing power rankings. Denton Day and Ben Strober on Westwood One Sports. We're power ranking the teams that had the best free agency classes. At number 4, I have the Tennessee Titans. It was the worst-kept secret in the world that Wan'Dale Robinson was going to go play for the Tennessee Titans. He's a fan of Brian Dable. But adding Alontae Taylor and Cordell Flott at the cornerback positions, adding John Franklin Myers on the defensive line, they needed to get better in a lot of positions. They added some offensive line help as well in order to protect Cam Ward. And then I factor in, this doesn't count for free agency, but they also, they kept Calvin Ridley. So you're now pairing Wan'Dale Robinson with Calvin Ridley. And I think that's a very nice pairing to have for a young quarterback that needs the options and that needs the weapons. The lone reason, Ben, why they're not higher on my list here is that I do find it like a little weird that Brian Dable and Robert Saleh signed a bunch of dudes that got them fired at their old respective jobs. Like, that is a little bit concerning, but I like the moves that they made. I can see the vision that they're moving with, and it's all about making sure the quarterback is as comfortable as possible while also making sure the opponent's quarterback is as uncomfortable as possible. And I think the Titans took a couple of big steps into making that their reality.
Yeah, I think everything's going to be dependent on how things continue to progress with Ward, obviously, in that situation. But it seems like every year, Denton, there's one of those teams that goes from worst to first because of a really good free agency class. So Tennessee could very well be one of those teams. They did not make the top 5 in this list for me, but I am going to go with Tampa Bay at number 4, just really for one signing alone. I love the addition of Kenneth Gainwell, who they get on a 2-year deal, $14 million, so $7 million annually for Gainwell. I think this actually pairs really well in the backfield alongside Bucky Irving. And you just think about what Tampa went through last season. I believe they started 5-1 on the year and just really fell off throughout the entirety of the second half of the season. The Panthers end up winning the NFC South. I'm sure you and I will talk a lot about the Panthers in this segment here as well. But Tampa's a team that I think is still very, very good, and it's going to be dependent on what they're able to get out of Mayfield the rest of the time here. But the fact that you get another back to pair alongside Irving there, I think is going to help them out a lot. I expect Tampa to bounce back this season, and I like this signing a lot for them. And they got Otten back on the 3-year deal as well.
I got the Titans at 4. Ben has the Buccaneers at 4. As we're power ranking the teams that had the best NFL free agents and free agent class here on Westwood One Sports. You're listening to D-Day on Westwood One Sports. At number 3, I got a team that hits close to home because it is the hometown team. I love what Washington has done. I looked at Washington's defense last year and wanted to vomit on a weekly basis. They stunk. They couldn't get after the quarterback. They didn't have a lot going for them in stopping the run either, and they have made the moves necessary to make adjustments. They were slow as hell in 2025. They were old as hell in 2025, and in 2026, they're going in with a bunch of young dudes that are fast. That's a great decision-making group that Washington has and the way that they maneuvered around free agency, and they're really not spending a ton of money either, with the assumption that they're eventually going to have to sign Jaden Daniels to a ginormous contract when he has a crazy bounce-back season, theoretically and hopefully, in 2026. So I love the moves that Washington made. Odafe Owa at the edge spot is huge for them. He's significantly better than anything they had in 2025. So is Kayvon Chason. And then you get Leo Chanel to play linebacker. I love me Bobby Wagner. I think when you look at some of the best linebackers of a generation, Bobby Wagner is on that list. But damn it, if he wasn't running in coverage far too many times and watching him trying to run after like Bijan Robinson, I don't know that there was a point in his life where he was ever going to be able to catch Bijan Robinson, but he certainly wasn't going to be able to do it now. So at the very least, you get some athleticism at the linebacker spot. I just love the mentality that Washington took when it came to building their defense. And then on top of that, you get Chigakonko at tight end, who I think can be a playmaker with Jaden Daniels. And then you sign his old former college teammate Rachaad White coming over from Tampa, while also leaving room for the inevitable addition of Brandon Ayuk, because it feels like everyone in the world is expecting when Brandon Ayuk gets cut from the San Francisco 49ers, which he has not officially been, he is going to make his way to Washington to play with his former college teammate, Jaden Daniels. So I love what Washington has done.
Den, real quick question before I get to my third. Do you still get Ayuk and then draft a receiver at 7? Because I think receiver at 7 seems in play for Washington right now.
I think it does, but I think what Washington has done the best is given themselves options at 7.
Yes,
so they can
sure.
draft wide receiver. They can draft best available, which could potentially be Jeremiah Love. Maybe they feel like it's Caleb Downs. Maybe they want an edge guy. Odafe Owa is the only guy that's on the roster contract-wise for 2000 or past 2027. So that's still an option for them. They could trade back. I mean, they position themselves to be able to utilize number 7 to do a bunch of different things, which usually speaking, if you're drafting for need when it's not a quarterback, you put yourself in a bad spot, and Washington's done the opposite.
Absolutely. I'm going to stick with the NFC South here for my third best team. We're going with the Carolina Panthers, who had a very active free agency period. It starts off with an overpay, I'd say, of Jalen Phillips, but that's a little bit beside the point of it being an overpay at 4 years, $120 million. I still think he's a very, very good player. He's going to help out that defense a lot. That defense desperately needed it. But I think this is Carolina, in a way, trying to make itself a destination again, saying, hey, we have the ability to sign this type of player that we think can be a game wrecker for this defense. So I love the fact that they're able to go out and make a big splash with a move like Phillips, and then get Devin Lloyd on a 3-year, $45 million deal. I was proponent of getting him in D.C., and once I found out that he was only signing for $15 million per, I was like, Adam Peters, how could we not get this deal done? I love that addition in the middle with Devin Lloyd, Isaiah Simmons as well. And then I like that they fortified their offensive line a little bit to protect Bryce Young. They bring in Stone Forsythe and then Rasheed Walker as well. So making those additions on the offensive line I think will be helpful. But the massive upgrades they made to their defense, that makes that NFC South a lot more interesting next year. And this is a team in Carolina that won it last year despite maybe not really being deserving of being a playoff team based on record. They showed me a lot last year, and I think they're going to be even better in this upcoming season.
We got more on Carolina coming up here. We're doing power rankings. I'm Denton Day. My producer, Ben Strober's hanging out. We're making some power rankings of the teams that have the best free agent classes in the NFL. We've gone 5-3. Number 2 for me is the Las Vegas Raiders. They had money to blow, and damn it if they didn't blow a lot of that money. And they did it all while also then having to take on Max Crosby's money that they thought they were getting rid of because Baltimore pulled the old okey doke on them with the trade. But signing Tyler Lindenbaum and, getting to watch the Raiders up close and personal when they came to D.C. This past season, that offensive line was garbage. It was awful. I think Geno Smith still has good football in him. I couldn't tell this year because they couldn't protect anybody. They were a turntable when it came to the offensive line. So when you go out there, is resetting the market for a center the boldest or the best thing that you can do? I would say maybe not. Maybe you shouldn't be in the market to reset it for a center, but you needed a guy that could be a reliable option to have to anchor the offensive line, and Linderbaum is going to be that for Las Vegas. And then they added Nakobe Dean and Quay Walker and Kwity Paye and Jalen Naylor, and you keep Max Crosby, so your defense has gotten significantly better. You keep the best player on your defense, and all of a sudden, it doesn't necessarily look like hey, this rebuild isn't going to be the worst thing in the world. I know Max Crosby doesn't want to be a part of a rebuild. They're still in that process because we don't know what Mendoza is going to look like at the NFL level, and I don't know that he is necessarily the guy that Jaden was or CJ Stroud was to immediately come in season number 1 and blow the roof off of the NFL. But I think you've done enough to surround him to make his transition to the NFL as comfortable as it could possibly be for a rookie. So for that, I got the Raiders at number 2.
Yeah, they've been busy. I definitely can't argue with that. And I know you already hit on this team, but the hometown guys, the Washington Commanders, come in at number 2 on my free agency list here. And you think about all the additions they have made. Adam Peters is finally starting to beat those retirement home allegations by bringing in guys between the ages of 24 and 28 to play on this defense. You're getting younger, you're getting faster, and you're bringing in the guys that can provide you a new dynamic on this new David Blau-led offense as well. You're going to be in a more pro-style offense, a lot more under-center concepts. So you bring in a guy in Chiga Okonkwo that didn't really necessarily get a ton of opportunities at the tight end position when he was in Tennessee. And that's why when he did some of these interviews he did this past week in the DC sports radio market, you could hear the excitement in his voice knowing that he's going to be a major feature in this offense. And I've got a lot of love for the guy, obviously, as a Maryland Terrapin, but I think he's going to be great for Washington. Just to have a guy that says he wants to bring the yard after the catch ability at the tight end position, I think is massive. But when you also think about what Washington was able to do in terms of his in-house stuff here in the free agency, I think that was even more important when it comes down to it. Getting Laramie Tunsil to sign that 2-year extension at $60 million, a massive move for this franchise. The Lattimore trade was an absolute disaster for Adam Peters, but this Tunsil trade was a mega home run. This guy's still a top 5 left tackle in football. You have your guy to protect Jaden while he is still on this rookie contract. And additionally, you had some other moves here in-house with that offensive line to keep it fortified. You bring back Trent Scott, Andrew Wiley. We get the news that Chris Paul yesterday will re-sign with the Commanders. They've made a lot of great moves on defense, on offense as well. I think they've actually acquired depth on this team, something they didn't have. They really could have used it last year with all the injury attrition that they had. And now, like you said before, they have a ton of flexibility with what they can do with the 7th overall pick. You could go with any of these top guys, and Sonny Styles on defense there, Caleb Downs at safety, or, dare I say, Jeremiah Love. Could he still be in the picture even though they got Jerome Ford today? I don't know, Denton, but I love what Washington did this offseason.
Yeah, both of us have Washington in here. The Reddit's going to go crazy. These DC guys just talking about the Commanders. Well, damn it, they have a good free agency. All right, final one here. We're going to get to Josh Graham because we've hit halftime in the ACC championship game. Final one, the number 1 team that I think has had the best free agency has been the Carolina Panthers. Simply put, I don't think that Bryce Young is going to carry you to a championship, but we saw the Seattle Seahawks carry Sam Darnold to a championship with defense, and Carolina went out and they addressed the defense. They get Jalen Phillips, albeit he's had an injury history, but he's one of the most talented pass rushers that was available. It was him or Hendrickson. You pay a little bit more than what Hendrickson ultimately got in Baltimore, but you kind of like the fit of what he is to your defense. You go get Devin Lloyd. You reunite Bryce Young with one of his former teammates in John Mechie III. Now, I'm not going to sit up here and act like John Mechie III is going to be this massive addition. We haven't really seen him play exceptionally well at the NFL level, but at least you get Bryce Young a friend on the offense. They address the offensive line with Luke Fortner at center, with Rasheed Walker at left tackle. So I do feel like the Carolina has made some really positive steps to, again, making the NFC South look interesting. I don't necessarily love anybody, but I can come up with reasons and decisions to like everybody in the NFC South. So for that, I think the Panthers have had the best free agency.
It's crazy because I would have thought 2 years ago I would never show any type of love to the Carolina Panthers, but
here we
kind of proved me wrong
world.
over the past couple of seasons. So I'm kind of rooting for them in a way to continue this rise that they are on right now. A team that doesn't really need to be on the rise, I guess, because of what they've done the past 10 years in the NFL here. Not necessarily last year, of course, with it being the only year in the Mahomes era that's been this bad. But I have the Chiefs at number 1 just because you bring in the Super Bowl MVP in Kenneth Walker. I thought he was the best player overall in this entire NFL postseason. And I frankly think Seattle made a mistake by letting him walk. And for Kansas City to be able to bring him in at 3 years, $45 million, I think this is a move that they needed to make because the Chiefs are an interesting story this year. You knew that there was going to be a pretty big shakeup with their team. They obviously just traded a star corner away in McDuffie, but it feels ominously similar to when they traded Tyreek Hill back 4 years ago, and that kind of extended their window to what it is now because they hit on all of those draft picks. Kansas City is trying to emulate something similar with the move that they made to send McDuffie to Los Angeles, but to have Walker in the backfield for when Mahomes is back, is he actually going to play week 1? That's what they say. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I think he's going to help out regardless of who's at quarterback week 1. And if it is Mahomes, and we know what 15 does when he's healthy and he's out there, I would not count out the Chiefs. You just can't do it, man.
No, that we certainly do. So that's our list. If we missed anyone, 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. When we get back, we go out to Charlotte. It's halftime of the ACC Championship game. Our guy Josh Graham is going to give us a very, very quick update on what he's seen and whether or not Virginia can pull the upset over Duke. Don't go anywhere. It's Denton Day on Westwood One Sports.
Chaos. The Ravens backed out of their trade for Max Crosby. Will he return to the Raiders, or will the elite pass rusher be traded again to another team? We'll let you know what happens next and what it means in this historic saga. Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
Denton Day on Westwood One, and it's a privilege now to be joined from a man that is boots on the ground at the ACC Championship game. We are at the half with Duke and UVA. Duke with a 2-point lead, 38-36, and Josh Graham is with us here. He is in the arena. I don't know where in the arena he is right now. It looks like a dungeon almost, but he is here. If you're not watching on the stream, come over to the YouTube, Westwood One Sports Night. You can see both of our pretty faces. He might have actually done makeup. I did not do makeup because I'm just at home. But Josh, first half of the game, how's it been?
It's been a really fascinating, worthy title fight in the first 20 minutes. And this is one of those deals where in postseason play, we get to be closer to the benches than we are at any other point during the season. And you just learn things if you pay close attention. So fortunately, the ACC has given us a great seat right in between the two benches. And in the first 10 minutes, the Duke bench was jostling and trying to get some help from operations staff. And it turns out they had some issues with connectivity with iPads and there was something that they were considering the challenge, but they couldn't get the video up. And Duke, it seemed so much was going wrong for them, and it was Boozer that picked them up, except just not the Boozer that we're used to seeing do it. Cam Boozer's the National Player of the Year, but it was Caden who had 12 points in the first 12 minutes, and then he had a breakaway dunk that had his dad standing and clapping and saying, "This is our house." It felt like a dangerous moment for Virginia, who was down 7 points down the stretch of the first half, but the Hoos responded, hit a couple free throws, hit a three, and it was Dallin Hall who hit it, and he immediately turned to the Duke bench right where I was sitting, said something to Pat Gamba and Caleb Foster that had them laughing, but Virginia counterpunched 7-2 run to close the first half, and that's why we end up at a place where it's only a 2-point margin heading into the final stanza.
I think it's fair to say that there is a lot of pressure on Caden Boozer because he's Duke's only point guard at this moment, but you mentioned 12 points in 12 minutes, 14 for the entire half. How is he kind of settling into this role of now being the primary point guard, primary ball handler for a team that has not just ACC championship aspirations, but now NCAA tournament championship aspirations?
I think John Shire's done a really nice job of – he told me at the very beginning of the season, this isn't like last year's team where we know who the five are and that's who we're going to bring out. It's – throughout the year, you've seen different guys start. There were times where it was Boozer. There were times where it was Caleb Foster. And then down the stretch, Caleb got more of the starts. But if you look at playing time, which matters more, it's been pretty evenly split. There have been some games where it was early on Nick Haminya or it was Dame Sarr. Haminya had some big moments in that first half, too. Physical, got called for a couple of fouls. So I think John's done a really nice job of giving guys a lot of different, exposing them to a lot of different things throughout the season so that they feel prepared for March, which falls in line with the theme of Duke. The thing that cost them in the Final Four last year was a lack of preparedness of playing in close games. Duke's been really good at that this season. They just keep finding ways to win. And a Duke assistant staffer told me right before this game tipped off, he's like, if we win this game today, this might be the most impressive championship that we've had, to try to make it into a chess match and have to play certain pieces a certain way in order to win without two starters.
So I'll get you out of here on this. Second half just tipped off, so I want you to get back into your seat so you can enjoy the game. But Caden and Cam Boozer have combined for 16 points. Caden has 14 of those. How do they get Cam Boozer more involved in half number 2?
It's weird. Cam Boozer is your National Player of the Year, but throughout the year he's had very slow starts. Michigan State, Arkansas, Florida, those are a few games early that come to mind. But he always seems to find his groove. He never really forces things. The Kansas game at MSG comes to mind too. And by the end of the game, you watch. In fact, it had me thinking. The first game of the year Duke played was in this building, and Cam Boozer had 0 points in the first half and a couple of rebounds, finished with 15 and 12. So we'll see if that follows suit, whether or not he's able to get activated and that it looks like a pretty good stat line at the end of the game.
That's Josh Graham. Josh, appreciate it, man. Go into the second half.
See you guys.
Josh Graham making some time for us here on Westwood One Sports. He was live at the ACC Championship game. It's been a little bit of a burst for UVA to start the second half. Duke had a 2-point lead. UVA now they've tied the game up, but they're looking like they're playing in a little bit more, shall we say, rhythm. They have a 1-point lead now, made a free throw. They're playing it with a little bit better rhythm right now than the Blue Devils are. And, I find something that Josh said to be really fascinating in terms of how you would view this ACC championship if you are the Blue Devils, right? Because they dealt with no Cooper Flagg in last year's ACC tournament. But understanding the differences from this team to last year's team and having a premier player like Cam Boozer, but dealing with the injuries, plural, to Caleb Foster, to your starting center, and Ngangbo, and then kind of maneuvering through that, and all while doing so, playing in an ACC that is, I would say, significantly better than what the ACC was last year, would be incredibly impressive. I think that Arizona is going to end up being the number 1 overall seed, regardless of what happened here tonight. Hell, even if Duke was healthy, I still would lean Arizona as the number 1 overall seed because of the way that they played. There's a battle-tested element to them that's been really impressive. They can do so many different things, but this Duke team, if they're fully healthy, would have been like, those are your ones and your 1-2, right? Like, hey, we are hoping to see these two teams playing in the national championship. That's obviously not how it works. The world is not perfect, but I'm going to be very intrigued to see where Duke falls on the bracket. They're going to be a 1 seed, but really who falls in their side of the bracket, because I do think that there's going to be a lot of teams that are 2 seeds, 3 seeds, and 4 seeds that are going to be crossing their fingers, putting ice underneath their pillow, and then saying many prayers between now and Selection Sunday saying, put us on Duke's side. Hey, we got ourselves a great guard. We want to attack the weakness. I mean, Duke is, in a sense, an animal with a limp. I'm not going to say like a full wounded animal, because when I say the term wounded animal, I think of an animal that's like really roughed up. And Duke's not that, because they still have Cam Boozer, and Caden Boozer, at least in this game, is really showcasing, hey, there's a reason we were known as the Boozer twins in high school, right? Which they were. When they were coming out, it was the Boozers plural, because both of them were going to be really, really good in college. And then Cam Boozer is kind of elevated as the season has progressed. And as Josh mentioned, he has been in Player of the Year conversations. But Caden Boozer is getting now to showcase, hey, I can do this at this level as well. So they're not wounded, but they have a little bit of a limp. And you know who I want to race? If we're going to make this, let's make this a racing analogy. You know who I want to race? I want to race the person with a limp, because I don't have a limp. So if I'm a 2 seed or a 3 seed and I have good guard play, I'm going to want to eventually have a matchup with a team that doesn't have good guard play. And I'd much rather match up with Duke right now versus a team like an Arizona or a Houston. I mean, Houston has great guard play and they're physical as hell in a way that Duke is not. So I'd be very, very, I think there's going to be a lot of teams that are hoping and praying, hey, give me the 2 seed on Duke's side. Give me the 3 seed on Duke's side. Like UConn right now Hey, we just got beat up by St. John's. Doesn't matter. Give me the 2 seed on Duke's side. I want to be on that side of the bracket. If we played ourselves off of the 2 line, give me the 3 line on their side of the bracket to see if we can take them down and then make that side of the bracket incredibly wide open. I'm always very interested in like how brackets kind of play out. I've been doing pools as long as I can remember, the same way that you have been doing pools probably as long as you can remember. And it feels like every single year, everybody picks Duke to win. I do feel like there might be a little bit of a step back from that this year due to the injuries. Either that or people who don't follow college basketball have no idea about the injuries and they're all just going to pick Duke. And then you, who didn't pick Duke because you're smart and they're hurt, you're going to be the genius that wins your bracket. Then you can go to the water cooler and brag to everybody, hey, my bracket's lit and yours isn't. I'm Denton Days, Westwood One Sports. We got more coming your way next.
This is Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
It's Denton Day on Westwood One Sports. We got eyes on the ACC Championship. UVA leads Duke by 4 with about 14 minutes left to go. Well, make that UVA leads Duke by 1 with 14 minutes left to go. Cam Boozer just hit a deep three. Needed that one. He's struggled a little bit today offensively. That was only his second made field goal of the game. His brother's been playing very well. Caden Boozer and Isaiah Evans have been carrying Duke to this point in the game and keeping them in the game with UVA. It is still weird to me as somebody that grew up in the state of Virginia and really loved Tony Bennett. I mean, he was one of my favorite coaches. It's very weird to me still to see UVA put up points. I mean, this team, Ryan Odom has done an unbelievable job remaking the identity of what Virginia is to where they still play good fundamental basketball, but they do so while also making it fun to watch. Because, damn it, man, I love Tony Bennett, but his teams were a bore to get through at times. When they won the national championship, that game was a tough watch. It made me a hell of a lot of money, but it was a tough watch. So to see UVA now score the basketball and score at a very high rate has been a lot of fun. We'll keep you posted on this particular game. It's a tie now, 49-49. I have an inkling that it's going to come down to the final few minutes of the game, which is what I'm rooting for. We've been treated to some really good action over the last 48 hours in college basketball. We've had some upsets in conference tournaments, but it's the games that are the close ones at the end that makes March synonymous with, at least to me, to the fun of it. So to be able to see the Arizona and Houston ending today, to be able to see what Arizona did yesterday with a game-winning walk-off shot, awesome. Michigan winning on a walk-off shot, awesome. It would be dope if we get a UVA-Duke walk-off to win the ACC championship tonight. So my fingers are crossed. Let's see if we can get something like that going. Purdue and Michigan are going to face off in the Big Ten championship tomorrow. That's really exciting because I feel like those are the two teams that I've wanted to see square off in this championship throughout the course of the Big Ten tournament. I have this weird love of Purdue. I shouldn't love them, but I have this weird love of Purdue because I love their head coach, Matt Painter. So anytime I get to see Matt Painter coach, I think it's a win, even if watching his team sometimes is like nails on a chalkboard for me just because I don't love the way that they play. He's just such a good coach. So you're going to see that one tomorrow. St. John's beat the doors off of UConn, 72-52. Arkansas is going to face off against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt beat the doors off of Florida today in the SEC semis. They beat them by 15. Florida was the consensus 4th 1 seed, and they put that role up for grabs. If Houston would have beaten Arizona, I think an argument could have been made that Houston would have taken it, but they did not. If UConn would have beaten St. John's, I think there might have been an argument that UConn could have been a number 1 seed. They did not do that. So I think Florida's still going to have the one line, but the loss to Vanderbilt was like a, whoa, hey, this is not the team that we thought it was, because this whole week people have been saying, hey, Florida for the championship. Hey, don't sleep on Florida. This is a good team. This is a good group. Florida could be the ones. So that's going to be something to kind of monitor again once the brackets get unveiled. I'm gonna give you some bracket etiquette by the time we end the show. This is the final hour of the program. By the time we end the show, I'm going to give you some bracket etiquette to make sure that you are good to go for your office pools, your family pools, and what have you. It's Denton Day on Westwood One Sports. That bracket etiquette's going to come your way in about 30 minutes time. I do want to get to a big story that I don't want to fly under the radar because of all of the great basketball games that we have seen today, because it involves one of the great basketball players that is playing in the college world. There has been so much made about Darryn Peterson and what people have described as the antics and not understanding, not knowing if they can trust Darryn Peterson, which has then led to people mischaracterizing Darryn Peterson. And we found out today that there was a lot of information that we were unaware of. And it's really unfortunate, but there's so many people that jumped to judgment instead of grace with Darryn Peterson. And now that we have real information, the act of doing so looks rather despicable. It really feels like it was just an all-out attack on a kid that didn't deserve to be treated in the public eye the way that he was treated because of some of the things that were going on behind closed doors. Kansas ended this portion of their season. They're going to be in the NCAA tournament, but they lost in the Big 12 tournament yesterday. And then we got more information because Darryn Peterson, for the first time, talked about it. He did an article, or he spoke to a reporter from the Kansas City Star, and he talked about some of the things that have gone on this year that we all had opinions on, but we didn't know the reasonings, and we didn't know the facts behind what was happening. And there's been, again, this mischaracterization of Darryn Peterson as not just a basketball player, but as a human that has been running rampant on social media for weeks now. It really started, big time at least, with him missing the Arizona game due to a flu. Some of this was kind of sitting there by the wayside prior to that because he had missed games before then, but it was the best player missing a game at home against the number one overall team at the time in Arizona, the number one ranked team, I should say, in Arizona, while after he had warmed up. And that led to this groundswell of anti-Darryn Peterson. Well, in this article, we find out that the reason that he has been missing games to the magnitude that he has is due to cramping. But not the cramping you think of when you hear cramping. Because if you are like me, when you just hear, hey, I have a cramp, I think of a side stitch. Because most people think of side stitches. Because what happens when you do any sort of athletic activity, if you're even the slightest bit dehydrated, you get a little bit of a side stitch. It kind of pinches you and you're like, oh, this kind of sucks. I need more water. I need potassium. Somebody get me a Gatorade or a Powerade or whatever the damn sports drink that you prefer is. You're like, hey, let me get something so I can get rid of this. This is not what Darryn Peterson was dealing with. He was dealing with full body cramps. The body locking up and being unable physically to move to the point where not only did he consistently need IVs days before the game, he at one point, prior to the season started, was hospitalized. No one knew about this. This hadn't been reported by anybody. I mean, you want to applaud anything, applaud Kansas for keeping a lot of this in-house. Because lesser operations, this would have been out. And maybe it would have been beneficial to Darryn Peterson had this made its way out to the news cycle to say, hey, this is not just a question of character and a question of competitiveness. He actually physically cannot move because the body is cramping up. I can't imagine what it feels like to get a body cramp. I don't even know what that means. My thigh will cramp up or my calf will cramp up and it'll suck. And I'm down for the count for a couple of days. I can't imagine what happens when the entire body cramps up. In fact, I was talking this segment over with my sounding board, a.k.a. the missus. And she did some research. And she researched full body cramps. in what she found, and she texted me this because she's like, I want to help you out. And I said, this is why we married. We got married. Thank you, sweetie. She texted me and she said, full body cramps are effectively comparable to the early parts of childbirth. And I was like, well, I don't know what that feels like because I will never have to know what that feels like. And she then followed up and said, it's one of the most painful feelings that you can endure. So keep in mind, Darryn Peterson is having full body cramps, and that's the major reason why he is not out on the floor playing. So while people are criticizing him, oh, he's not with his teammates. Oh, he's sitting on the bench, but he's not cheering. He's not jumping up and down while the dude is experiencing pain. Now, I don't know how often these full body cramps were taking place, because there's something in this article that was written that I'm going to read in a second that would suggest it was maybe a little bit more of a traumatic reaction to an initial full body cramp, and not that he was suffering from those the entire time. But odds are he's suffering from multiple cramps at the same time, making him unable to move. So he described this full body cramp that happened before the season started, calling it a traumatic experience. Now, trauma is a word that is used a lot more frequently in today's society, which I don't believe to be a bad thing. But oftentimes, if a 19-year-old is saying something that is traumatic, you kind of got to assess the situation a little bit, because teenagers have this thing about being dramatic, right? If you're a parent, you know that. You're like, yeah, I got a dramatic teen. Teens have this ability to be dramatic. But with Darryn Peterson, I find it to be a little bit different. I don't think this is a dramatization of the situation he was dealing with. I think not only is he having a physical ailment, there's then a mental component that comes to overcoming the physical ailment. Because when you're hospitalized, you know what you don't want to be? Hospitalized. It sucks. And it's kind of embarrassing too. It shouldn't be, but it's kind of embarrassing. So I can only put myself in the shoes of Darryn Peterson thinking, do I really, if I'm playing a game, right? Like, we all remember the moment he hits the three against Cincinnati, and then he taps Bill Self and says, I got to get out of this game. He gets pulled from the game. He doesn't play for the rest of the game. I can only imagine what is going through his head as he is sitting there thinking, if my entire body cramps up, I'm going to have to leave the stadium on a gurney. And that sucks, dude. Nobody wants to leave the stadium on a gurney. Then what's already become this like big balloonish of a headline, it becomes clear for everybody to see. Now everyone who's already up in your business, they're even more up in your business because you just left the floor on a stretcher. And now you're going to a hospital and everybody knows about it. I can understand why a 19-year-old maybe doesn't want everybody to know that he's hanging out in hospitals having to get IVs because his body isn't operating the way that it should be. And I can also understand why a 19-year-old maybe doesn't want to then sit in front of a microphone and explain something that in reading the article, it doesn't really feel like they have a good explanation for. I read this entire thing from the Kansas City Star. It was a great piece. But we weren't really given, hey, this is the exact reason why this is happening. So he's going through this traumatic experience physically. He's then going through the traumatic experience mentally. And this entire time, when people are getting on microphones and social media and cameras and skewering the kid, he has no active idea what's happening. He doesn't know how to fix it. They're just going through the motions and going through the steps of, hey, this works the best, so we're going to keep this thing going. All while people are saying this dude's not competitive, he doesn't care, he's just in it for the money, and he's working his ass off trying to get himself back on the floor. It's just been a total bastardization of the kid. And I'm not doing this because I'm like, everybody needs to apologize to him. I'm not an idiot. I know the way the world works. Grace is a one-way street. You expect it to be given to you. You're very less frequent to then go give it to others in a situation like this. If you spent a lot of the last 2, 3, 4 weeks bashing a kid, you're not all of a sudden going to come out and say, hey guys, my bad, missed out on that one. That's not how that's going to work. But it should. And this is a really staunch reality, and this harsh reality coming to light of, hey, we aren't treating people the way that we should. We just ran with something that wasn't even remotely true, not knowing any of the details, and now the details come out and a bunch of people are caught with their pants down. I don't think this is going to impact his draft status. I know there's a lot of people that say, hey, we like college basketball, Denton, we care about the NBA draft. I don't think it's going to impact his draft status, but what I really wanted to impact is the way that he plays in the NCAA tournament. I was already kind of rooting for the kid because I thought some of this was going way over the top, and I was like, there's just no way. There's just no way that Bill Self is getting punked by a 19-year-old who's just in it for the money. Right? I mean, people were calling this dude Kawhi Leonard because they thought that the family was doing some stuff that Kawhi's uncle did where he was just trying to squeeze every single dollar out of his opportunities in free agency. I mean, they were calling this dude every name under the sun, and I was like, surely this is not the case because there's no way that Bill Self would continue to put up with this if that was the case. That dude is one of the greatest coaches of a generation. He's not getting punked by a 19-year-old who's getting paid $3 million when the same people that are paying the 19-year-old are A, also probably paying Bill Self, but B, dude, it's 2026. You don't think there aren't clauses in these NIL deals to say, hey, if things go like really sideways and we find out that you're just doing this for the money, we're not going to pay you the money. Like there are clauses in these contracts to where if we're going to give you $3 million, like it is going to be well earned. Because nobody with money is stupid enough to routinely just freely give it away. That has never been the case, right? So I never fully got on board with this idea that he was just punking everybody and he just wanted to sit and collect a check before he went to the NBA. Ben, I know you're passionate about this subject, and for those that don't know, the producer of this show is Ben Strober, and Ben is a DC legend. Host the Locked On Wizards podcast. If you care about the Wizards, go listen to that. If you don't care about the Wizards, still go listen to that because we support our own. I know you've talked to people in regards to the Darryn Peterson stuff. What are some of the things that you have heard from people around the NBA?
What I've heard is they do checks on these type of prospects. People that are involved in scouting around the league, they will constantly do checks with a player, with an organization, and so far Peterson has passed those checks when it comes to character, trying to see if anything really nefarious was going on in the situation, like a non-competitive nature. I never really thought that from the start. When I heard about all this stuff and saw him tap Bill Self to ask to come out of the game, it just seems unlikely that a guy that's been a competitive force his entire life would all of a sudden not be at the highest stage. That's not how these type of dudes are wired. That's not how Darryn Peterson is wired. And what I've heard is that he has passed a lot of these checks when people have really checked in on the situation. Now, this information that you're presenting here, a lot of this is new. And one thing that we have to understand within the situation, you mentioned it's a 19-year-old kid up there. A lot of times players like this will take advice from their agents, from their family, on how to handle a situation like this. So you have to figure when Darryn Peterson is going through these full body cramps, he was probably told by people saying like, hey, like, we're going to do our best to keep this under wraps at the moment. This isn't something you should publicly comment on right now. So Peterson is following the advice that he is being given. Whether people think it's good or bad advice is up to their own discretion in the situation, but you still can't deny the talent he's displayed on the floor this season, despite, I think, playing hurt the majority of this year. So if you have qualms with him as a prospect because you think the injury stuff might be more serious than it was or might be too serious going forward to handle an 82-game NBA season, I can totally hear you out on that. But the way he's been able to also elevate his game, despite playing, I think, in a role that he didn't expect at first. If you watch this dude's high school tape, he was explosive. He was driving to the bucket, dunking on people. You don't see as much of that, maybe in a couple spurts here in his lone freshman season. But his off-ball numbers are ridiculous right now. I believe he's in the 100th percentile as a spot-up player, 97th percentile as a catch-and-shoot guy. These numbers were from about a week ago. I don't have them like up directly in front of me right now. But the way he's played off the basketball this year should be really encouraging to, I think, how he'll project as an NBA player, because if you do have him playing off the ball in a situation where they already have a pure point guard on the roster, he's going to play just fine. Maybe he'll develop to play more on the ball later as his career goes on, but he's going to be a special all-star level talent regardless of where he ends up in the league, barring the injury stuff doesn't plague him. Maybe that's going to be the issue for him, but it's not a character thing with Peterson.
No, and that's 100% right. It's not a character thing, despite the fact that people wanted to make it. And then they said, well, he's getting paid, so now he has to talk about these things. There is nothing in college basketball or college athletics that says because a certain player is getting paid X amount of dollars that he then has to go speak. In the NBA, it's a requirement. In the NFL, it's a requirement. With professional sports, it is a requirement. That does not exist in the world of college sports. And I know they're more professional than they are college right now, but that still doesn't exist there. There's no rule that has to allow that. You know why there's not a rule? Because then you kind of have to unionize. And they don't want to do that because when you unionize, then the schools actually have to be the ones paying the players for things of that nature. So I just hate the way that this has been presented over the last 4 weeks. And to get this news, it stinks because it almost feels like it's like a late season news dump and people have moved on from the story. But if he goes out and plays well in the NCAA tournament, I think people are going to direct their attention back to Darryn Peterson. And then hopefully this becomes a little bit more prevalent in those conversations of, hey, this is what he looks like when he's not suffering traumatic experiences, when he's not going through massive amounts of hardship and adversity. In fact, look at what happened when he battled back from the adversity that took place at the beginning of the season by dealing with these full body cramps that a basic human cannot comprehend unless you've gone through the pains of what it's being compared to, which is that of childbirth, which at least half of the population and probably a majority of the listeners have not gone through of this program. It's unfair to be in the position where you're judging him and now calling him not competitive and not a good a man of character, and you're posting that one picture where he's far away from his team. All of these different things. People were hunting material to call this dude a bad person, and that stunk, dude. Like, that is awful, and now that we got this news, it's even worse. It's one of the worst things of the weekend. I've compiled a list of the other things that I've seen this weekend that I don't like. I also found some good things, too, so I'm not just going to be totally pessimistic for the next 15 minutes, but I will give you my worst and best of the weekend next. It's Denton Day on Westwood One Sports.
Conference tournaments are happening now. Who's in? Who's out? And how should it impact your bracket? March Madness is upon us on your official home of the NCAA tournament. Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
We're keeping eyes on this ACC championship game. It's a fun one. It's all tied up 63 apiece with about 5 minutes to go. Duke is battling. UVA is battling. Cam Boozer's getting heavily involved. He's playing bully ball at times. They're telling that, hey, Cam, just go right to the paint and just make them stop you. And they largely are not stopping him. So that's a very effective way of maneuvering for Duke. We'll keep an eye on this one. I'm hoping, selfishly, it ends in the final segment of the show. If I could paint a perfect picture of how this is going to go. We get to react together to the ending of UVA and Duke. We're simulcast on Twitter and on YouTube. You can tweet me at TheDentonDay. You can find us on YouTube, Westwood One Sports Night. We're on the journey for 1,000 subscribers on the channel. You hear us regularly. Really, a member of Westwood One Sports Night is on Westwood One Sports Radio every single day. It's either Linnell Willingham, Josh Graham, and then occasionally your boy will tag in. So follow us and subscribe to us on YouTube and help us get to that 1,000 subscriber mark. We're trying to get it done by the end of the NCAA tournament. So not to put any pressure on you, but you better go over and you better subscribe. I put together a list. Most people do the best of the weekend. And I did put together a couple of things from the weekend that I liked. But I'm a little bit more of a pessimist. So I put together some things that I didn't like that have taken place over the course of the weekend. We're like stretching it a little bit because some of the stuff happened on Thursday and Friday. But I'm going to count it anyway. So I'm starting my worst of the weekend, and I'll get to the best stuff in a second. I do not like the Team USA World Baseball Classic uniforms. They are not attractive. There is so much left to be desired. We are coming off of the Olympics where the hockey uniforms are some of the great uniforms that you will ever see. I mean, you want to talk about a perfect designed Team USA uniform. You look at the hockey sweaters. It's beautiful. We're coming off of the NBA All-Star operation where it's USA versus the world. The OGs with that like nice navy blue with the gold stars. That's a beautiful Team USA jersey. I cannot stand looking at the Team USA World Baseball Classic jersey. It looks, for lack of a better term, it looks so Little League. And if I want to see the biggest players in the sport from my country on the biggest stage, I want it to be a dope uniform. I don't want it to be Little League. Where's the stars? We're not just a country of stripes. We need a country of stars. There's no stars on the uniform. I mean, really, you just get like the little S on the middle of USA. That looks like you could pick it up at like a local t-shirt making company. They couldn't get any better design than that. They couldn't get anything that was like grandiose and over the top. I'd much rather have an over the top jersey than a minimalist jersey. And that's kind of going to be the theme of the worst of the weekend for me. I want pizzazz. I want whimsy. I want in your face. When you think of some of your favorite logos and some of your favorite designs from whatever sport you love, from whatever jersey it was, from whatever team it was, odds are there was some sort of like real character to it. That just doesn't exist with this baseball uniform. The cap is even worse. I mean, the cap literally looks like every single Little League cap that I've ever seen before. Now, maybe that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to like, hey, look at us. Look, you're a Little League baseball player and you're wearing the same gear as us. You can strive for your dreams. Maybe they're doing that. I would have preferred that they did something sick. I would have preferred that they did something that was really, really awesome. And you look at it and you're like, I actually want to wear that. Because I look at what they're wearing right now and I'm like, man, I do not want to wear that. That looks boring as hell, and I would not put that on. My body is a temple, and I would not put that on there. I love the team. I want them to beat up on the Dominican Republic tomorrow. I'm a little cautious about that, I must admit. But I want them to beat up on the Dominican Republic. I want to see Paul Skeens pitch. It's a Skeens Sunday. Forget the Sunday Scaries. We're getting the Sunday Skeens tomorrow. I'm in on it. I just wish they looked better while they were doing it. So that's top of the list on things that I don't like. That's one of the worst of the weekend. Number 2, remember when I talked about hating minimalism in athletics? I don't like the Tennessee Titans' new throwback logo. It is too minimalist. It is boring. Where is the pizzazz? I would just literally just take everything I just said about Team USA and apply that to the Tennessee Titans. The colorway is amazing. It's like the baby blue with the red is a thing of, chef's kiss. It's a thing of beauty, but it's just, if you look at the logo, it's boring. It's bland. Like, where's the little tail feather to the Titan? It's just a T with the 3 stars, and somebody told me, Denton, it's like a playoff of the Nashville flag. Okay. Sick. Or the state of Tennessee flag, rather. Nice, bro. Maybe it is that. But the stars are not facing the right way. The Tennessee flag, the stars face the other way. And again, you can design something to represent the state that you have played your football in for decades now, but add like flavor to it. I don't need less of things when it comes to design. I want it to pop. I want to look at it and be like, I know exactly what this is. It's super sick. And while I'm not a fan of this, I would be interested in buying something like this. This is why so many people wear jerseys from retro, like from the 90s, whether it's basketball or football or baseball, because there was flair to them. Was it a little cheesy at times? I mean, yeah, a little bit. But I'll take like a little bit of cheesy with some personality versus just bland and minimalist and kind of gross. That's kind of what I look at the Tennessee Titans logo as. I need more to it. Like, give me more from a design perspective that adequately represents what you are as a team and what you are as a state. I just felt like they did a bad job with that. Number 3, final thing from my list, worst of the weekend. I did not like the design of the Big 12 court. The LED bit was terrible. They should have seen that coming from a mile away. The fact that anyone thought that an LED screen on a floor was going to be like this celebrated accomplishment. You got to read the room better. But on top of that, there were so many little markings on this. Now, this might be my flaw, right? Eye's not the best in the world. If you watch it on the YouTube or the stream, got glasses, 4 eyes. I've had glasses for a very long time, longer than you have. I don't care how old you are. I've had glasses longer than you have. When you're panning up and down the court in the Big 12 championship, and it's over now, so we don't have to deal with it, it was like kind of trippy, bro. There's too much going on. There's too much design going on. In the half court, it looks sick, right? It's like dark, it's moody, it's edgy, and that's, I guess, what the Big 12 is going for. I don't really think of them as a dark, moody, and edgy conference, but to each their own. You know, their identity is what it is. In the half court, it's sick. On a fast break, it sucks, dude. You're like, is my TV losing its stream? Is it losing its picture? What's going on here? I don't want to watch this. I'm getting dizzy by watching it because there's so much going on the floor. Just take that off. You can keep the colorway. Just take all that nonsense off the floor and just make it a nice, clean look. Like it's very reminiscent to me of some of like those goofy ass NBA Cup floors. Like some of the NBA Cup stuff was sick, but I forget who it was. I think it might have been the Heat. They had like this whole paragraph in the paint. Like, man, I'm not reading that when I'm watching a basketball game. Take that dusty ass thing off the floor. What is this, Star Wars? Like, there's a time and a place for the Star Wars bit. I'm not trying to see the Star Wars paragraph in the paint here. I kind of got a similar vibe with the Big 12 court, so I didn't like that very much. But I promise you, I'm a positive person. So now here's the things that I did like from the weekend. The Power Four conferences have been epic in terms of conference tournament stuff. As much as I hated looking at the Big 12 court, the Big 12 conference tournament was sensational. The shot that Arizona hit last night on Friday, the game between the heavyweights of Arizona and Houston, I mean, smack the forearms, dude. Like, inject this thing into the veins. This is what I want. When you talk about college basketball and some of the ways that it separates itself from the NBA, it's weekends like this weekend where you're constantly being fed games. It's not overwhelming, but it's wanted. You're going back for more. When we watched the end of that Arizona game, Arizona-Iowa State last night, I wanted to immediately see more. I was like, man, I can't wait for Houston and Arizona. Like, this is going to be awesome. I need more of these things. We're getting in the ACC right now. Duke and UVA are battling. It's 66-65. Duke leads with 3 minutes left to play in the ACC championship. I mean, where else would you rather be right now? I want to be in that arena. I want to be a part of that and what's going on there. In the Big Ten, we saw Michigan beat Wisconsin on a buzzer beater. In the A-10, they're not Power 4, but I'm going to include them in this. We saw a back-and-forth display with Dayton and St. Louis that only March Madness can provide to us. And I know March Madness traditionally is safe for the NCAA tournament, but I'm going to extend it a little bit to what we've seen in terms of the actual play on the floor in the conference tournament. This is high-level basketball. One of my biggest critiques about college basketball and why I sometimes like the NBA more than college basketball is that the shot-making ability at the collegiate level is just not what it was at the NBA. Sometimes I think people watch the NBA and they think a lot of points means that nobody's playing defense, when in reality, everybody is so damn good that you can play great defense and it's still not enough. I thought this week we saw a really nice elevation of play across college basketball to the point where you're glued to the television. And that was really, really awesome to see. And it gets me really excited for March Madness, for the NCAA tournament. You're already excited for the NCAA tournament, but it kind of elevates that level of excitement. So that's the top of the list of the things that were the best of the weekend. And then number two, I promise I'm not unpatriotic when it comes to the sports. The Dominican Republic and the bat flipping is the greatest thing that is happening in the World Baseball Classic. I get steamed up for a badass bat flip. The amount of aura that comes with a bat flip. And if you're over the age of like 34, you probably don't care about aura. I'm not over the age of 34, so I do care about aura. The idea of a bat flip after you just took somebody yard and the entirety of your country is behind you is the dopest thing in the world. I want Team USA to bat flip. I need them to come and approach the game that is going to take place tomorrow against the Dominican Republic with a level of swagger that we haven't really seen yet. And I know there are dudes on the team that possess a level of swagger. I need to see that because the Dominicans, bro, they are just dripping with it. The bat flips, the partying, just the confidence with the way that they carry themselves. It's been awesome. I need to see Team USA do that tomorrow. I know it's there. You know, they're favorites in this one. Minus 140 on the money line. If you're a savage, jump on it. I need to see that level of savage, that level of aura, because if it's going to suck tomorrow when that game, first pitch, 8 p.m., to see those dudes bat flipping on us, if that ends up being the case. It's going to be Skeens and Severino on the mound against one another. No Sunday scaries tomorrow, only Sunday Skeens for Team USA. It should be an exciting matchup. But, man, the aura on that Dominican Republic team is impossible to deny. And that worries me a little bit because I feel like the World Baseball Classic was designed, in a sense, to benefit the team with the most aura. I'm Denton Day. I'm sitting on Westwood One Sports. If you liked my lists, at the Denton Day. If you didn't like my lists, at the Denton Day. I'm not afraid on Twitter. Last call for phone calls, 310-840-4910. You can send a text into our text line as well. Same number, 310-840-4910, 310-840-4910. We'll put a bow on the show when we get back. An update from the ACC championship game in Charlotte. Duke leads by 2 with 2 minutes to play. So my wish is going to become a reality. We're going to watch the end of the ACC championship together as friends. It's going to be intimate. It's going to be fun. You're not going to want to miss it. We do it next on Westwood One Sports.
This exact time last year, the Seahawks signed their eventual Super Bowl winning QB, Sam Darnold. Which free agent signing could make the same impact? We'll tell you about the NFL moves you need to know. Westwood One Sports.
At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 4 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 3 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 2 minutes. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute, 30 seconds. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 1 minute. Stations, this is your final time check. At the tone, the broadcast will begin in 30 seconds.
Westwood One Sports presents Denton Day.
It's Westwood One Sports. Boy, this ACC championship game is not disappointing. I'm Denton Day. You can tweet me at the Denton Day and follow me there. There's a minute left to go, and Duke is up 2. And UVA has the basketball with 2 seconds on the shot clock. This has been a really, really awesome conclusion to the big-time basketball today. It looks like I think Duke wanted to challenge whether or not they had hit it out of bounds. They also reset the shot clock, so UVA has some time here. But this has been an awesome way to close the high-level basketball for the day, and Duke just fouled UVA. They're going to put them at the line for at least a 1-and-1. I don't think it's going to put them in the double bonus, but UVA is going to have an opportunity to tie. I got what I wanted. That game is going to end with us being on the air, so we're going to monitor that. We'll sneak in one final phone call here. Our boy Carter from the Bronx on the line. Carter, my friend, how are you? Carter, you there?
Can you hear me?
There he is. There, Carter. Bada bing, bada boom. Give me the truth.
Bada bing, bada boom. It's your boy Carter with the truth. Hey, I just wanted to give you a shout out. But I appreciate what you said about Darryn Peterson. I got to give a shout out to Linnell Willingham. I think he was the first one to really stand up and on air. It was a couple months ago. I think he said something about him cramping. He had some type of inside source. And, he said it's more serious than him, hustlish, whatever. So shout Linnell. I've seen somebody with a full body cramp. It's a very dangerous situation. This isn't just like an owie, boo-boo. This is an emergency situation in some cases. I don't know what happened to him specifically, but this can spread to your lungs, to your breathing, it's a full body spasm. You lock up, you can't move. So when he says he was traumatized, I have seen it happen to somebody. I was traumatized from it. So, I just wanted to say it is very serious. I appreciate you standing up for the kids.
Carter, I appreciate it. Hope you're doing well, my friend. I appreciate you calling in here. And that was based on a conversation that we had earlier. We got more information about this Darryn Peterson situation, and he's been experiencing full body cramps to the point where he was once hospitalized earlier this year. It's an incredibly scary thing to have take place. And then on top of that, he had this scary traumatic event. And then everyone said that he sucked as a competitor, and that he sucked as a person, and that he was leaving his teammates high and dry. Meanwhile, he's getting multiple IVs before he can play a basketball game, and he's literally being hospitalized with cramps. So it's really unfortunate the way that has played out in real time across most national platforms, right? And as Carter mentioned, Linnell Willingham on Westwood One Sports Night was the first guy to really go to bat for Darryn Peterson, at least on this particular platform and on most particular platforms, because of some of the things that he had started to hear and read about. Hey, there's a lot more to it than just he doesn't want to be out there. If you missed that conversation, it is available on our YouTube page. You just go Westwood One Sports Night. You got to subscribe, and you can go watch that video where Linnell is demanding that everybody gives Darryn Peterson an apology. But make sure you subscribe. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers as a unit by the end of the NCAA tournament. We built this thing up from the ground, so we would appreciate a subscribe. We got 27 seconds left in the ACC championship with Duke up 2 in the basketball. UVA had opportunities at the free throw line, and the big fundamental thing is making your free throws. They did not do it. Cam Boozer just drove to the rack and missed a layup but got his own rebound. They're literally just playing bully ball with Cam Boozer, and why is UVA not fouling at the moment? There was no shot clock. You got 19 seconds, and they're just looking at Duke dribble the basketball away at around half court, not attempting to foul. All you're doing at that point is wasting valuable seconds. So the Cavaliers just blew like 7 seconds. There's very few things that irk me more than like the basic fundamentals of gameplay not being executed. And that feels like what just happened for UVA. You go from missing free throws on one side, where you got to make your free throws. They're free, right? I mean, your dad has told you that. Your grandpa's told you that. You got to make your free throws. To then not understanding that with 19 seconds left and no shot clock, when you're down 2, you've got to put somebody at the line for Duke. They're just looking at him, looking at the coach, saying, Coach, are we supposed to foul? Yes, you're supposed to foul. Damn it, they're getting me fired up at damn near 11 o'clock because of this. I can't stand that sort of stuff. So they did foul, though. Thank God. Jeez Louise. It just aggravates me to no end because you should know this. Like, do they not practice these scenarios? You should know that. 7 seconds gone. You could use those 7 seconds. You also happen to put one of the best free throw shooters in the country, in Isaiah Evans, on the line. He's shooting 87% from the floor this year. Not ideal, but look, you got to just take what you can give. You got to go down and you got to get a 3. So you got to get the ball in the hands of your shooter. You're likely going to be down 4 here. He made the first one. We'll see what happens with the second one, but you're likely going to be down 4 here. So you got to march down the floor and fire up a 3 ball to at least cut it to 1, and then do this again. Foul them. Get them to the line. Don't waste any sort of time, but understand that they might try to force it down the floor to take up as much time as possible. Evans made the second one, so you got a 4-point game. Legally speaking, I can't do play-by-play because Westwood One, we're just not allowed to do those sorts of things. I don't know that UVA, who is supposed to be smart, knows how math works. They drive right down the floor for a layup, which is great, but that puts you down 2, and they don't immediately foul Cam Boozer, and it wastes like a second and a half, so you're going to put Cam Boozer on the line. Like, maybe you can get away with him missing one of these free throws and you being down only 3 here, but I would have liked a 3-point shot there from UVA. They also took up 7 seconds worth of time. They are just handing 7 seconds away like it's candy, right? There's 7 minutes in heaven. There's 7 seconds with UVA. You get 7 seconds here. You get 7 seconds here. Like, man, it'd be really nice if you were down 2 with 10 seconds right here. But because they didn't foul immediately after Cam Boozer's missed layup, they put themselves in a position where they only get 3 seconds right here. It's just fundamental basketball, man. And Odo's a really good coach. UVA is supposed to be a bunch of smart dorks. I grew up in the state. That's how it was presented to me. Don't take offense to that. I had some friends that went there. They're a bunch of smart dorks. They should know better. It's just basic math. It's basic fundamentalist here. Boozer makes the first one. I have a feeling that Duke is going to come away with this. It honestly does look kind of bad on the ACC because Duke is not playing at full strength and nobody could beat them. Like, your conference is supposed to be back. Maybe this just speaks, maybe I'm being too negative. This is the pessimist in me. And actually, it's that Duke is just so good that the ACC can't compete even when Duke is down a couple of players. But the way that I'm looking at this, you have a team that is down 2 massive starters, one of them being a point guard, and they just won the conference championship. Duke wins 74-70. I do think this is one of the best coaching jobs that John Shire has done. I know John Shire is never going to get like proper credit because he coaches at Duke, and it's the easiest thing in the world to get talent to go to Duke. But I do think he's done a wonderful job when it comes to his coaching this season. He just won an ACC championship without a starting point guard and without a starting center. He got backups playing those roles, and I know, again, like Duke, it's talent, whatever, but you've had guys that are stepping into roles where they were primarily not in during the course of the regular season, and they're not just stepping into them, but they're starting to excel. On top of that, and this is going to be very important for you when you're thinking about your brackets, Duke is sensational in close games. They were like 5-1 in games decided by 5 points or less before the ACC tournament started. They've won a couple of them in the ACC tournament, including this one. Duke knows how to close games out, and that's really important because oftentimes we see teams in the NCAA tournament that do not know that. Duke is a great example last year. They were not good in close games. They got themselves in a close game in the NCAA tournament, they didn't know what to do. They folded under the pressure a little bit. I think Shire's done a really, really good job in 2025 and 2026 of making sure that his team is prepared for these late game scenarios, and not just prepared, but comfortable for these late game scenarios, and they're handling it very, very well. So Duke wins the ACC championship. We get the Big Ten and the SEC championship tomorrow. I got Michigan over Purdue. I got Arkansas over Vanderbilt. I think Cal wins an SEC championship for his first time in Arkansas tomorrow. Big thanks to everybody hanging out with us. Big thanks to our guy Ben Strober producing the show, and Josh Jacobs in our studios out in Culver City. The great John Lund is coming your way next. I've been Denton Day. Hit me up on Twitter at @TheDentonDay. I'm out of here. I'll see you on Monday on Westwood One Sports Night.
This is Westwood One Sports.